I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good morning. I would first begin by reminding everyone to please check in with the attendants at the back of the room. Only authorized persons may sit in the roped-off area during the course of the day. Members should have their name tags on, which I don't. And I would also just remind you to shut off any cell phones. Now, I have a report from the checklist attendants, who this morning are Jane Fletcher and our very own Annette Cappy. I have been informed that we have 101 here already, so that is a quorum since we only need 78. There, now I have my patch on. I would like to start this morning by thanking Marshall Wheelock for the town meeting history lesson that he gave this morning, and call on him once again for a brief convocation. Marshall Wheelock himself is a great history lesson in how democracy works. I mean, that could be taken both ways, but he's a history lesson. He has been a representative town meeting member for over 40 years. He has served this community in a variety of ways, including currently as one of your three listers. He's currently the trustee of public funds. He has been chair of the Brattleboro Housing Authority. He was chair of the Brattleboro Cemetery Committee. He served on the high school board, and the list goes on. So I will call on Marshall for our convocation. Where'd he go? Oh.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Please excuse my back, but I've got to speak into the mic. So, and the other thing I would like to say before I start is I am most definitely not the oldest person in the building. I have been asked to offer a few words before we participate in one of the oldest democratic, with a small d, institutions in the country, the town meeting. The citizens of the town coming together to discuss matters that affect the town. Some of those matters are vital, some are pertinent, and some that many of us might feel to be frivolous, but all of which are important to those bringing them up, and all of which are to be considered and acted upon to the best of our collective judgment. At a point in time when in our country, when politics, as it is being practiced in many venues, is about winning and losing for the politician and/or his party or faction, instead of an attempt to better the lives of the citizens he or she represents, we can set a better example of how to govern. Govern both in the sense of helping to make decisions that will affect how our town faces its current issues and how it moves into the future, and in the sense of how we govern our own actions, respecting the opinions of those we feel to be demonstrably in error because they do not agree with us. I am, of course, preaching to the choir. In the over 40 years since I was first elected to be a town meeting member, I can recall occasions when people became excited over an issue, occasions when voices became, shall we say, emphatic, and occasions when questioning became persistent. But I do not recall a member ever taking to the microphone and being openly disrespectful of another. In a time that calls many to rally or march in favor of or opposed to much of what is happening in government, is it not at least as important to have examples of how it should be done? of how those elected to represent their peers can arrive at moderate, sensible, and balanced positions on even divisive issues by respectful debate, honest consideration of the ideas of others, and thoughtful, balanced judgment on how to decide an issue. So, welcome back to those of you who have sat through long Saturdays before, and a new welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. I really appreciate all the new young faces. This institution is not perfect, none can be when they are made up of human beings, but it can come reasonably close when we as its members chose to make it do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall, and thank you for your service to Brattleboro. At this time, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led this morning by Brattleboro Boy Scout Troop 405. You may come in. The boys present today are Slayton Peel, Riley Peel, Gareth Roy, and Stephen Borst. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, gentlemen. The chair would now call upon the town clerk, Hillary Francis, for the opening and closing paragraphs of the warning.
The legal voters qualified to vote in representative town meeting are hereby notified and warned to meet in the multipurpose room of the Brattleboro Area Middle School on Saturday, the 25th day of March, 2017, at 8:30 a.m. to act on 23 articles. This is dated at Brattleboro, Vermont, the 31st day of January 2017, signed by Brattleboro Select Board David Gartenstein, Chair, Kate O'Connor, Vice Chair, David Scholes, Clerk, John Allen, and Richard DeGray, and dated at Brattleboro, Vermont, the first day of February 2017, signed by Brattleboro Town School Directors Jill Stahl-Tyler, Chair, Mark Truhan, Vice Chair, Kim Price, Clerk, Todd Roach, and David Scholes.
I would like to spend just a moment going over the procedure for the meeting, especially for those of you who are new to this process. The town charter for the town of Brattleboro provides that voting on all matters shall be by standing, or if you're unable to stand, by raising your hand, or by division of the town meeting members, or by roll call vote of the town meeting members. 2, a division of town meeting members shall be had in the discretion of the moderator or upon demand of 3 or more of the members. 3, a roll call vote shall be had upon demand of 6 or more town meeting members. Now, with regard to the debate, this again comes out of the town charter. No town meeting member or voter of the town shall speak more than twice on the same question without leave of the town meeting members. 2, town meeting members or voters of the town who have once spoken shall not again be entitled to the floor to the exclusion of another who has not spoken. 3, a town meeting member may not call the question immediately after speaking on an issue. All motions and remarks should be addressed to the moderator. Motions and amendments should be in writing and handed to the moderator. Please use the microphones so viewers at home can hear your questions and comments. And in keeping with our tradition, I would ask that you limit your remarks to not more than 2 minutes. Vermont state law prohibits consideration of articles that have not been warned. That means that you cannot take binding action under the article Other Business, and you can't amend a warned article such that it would bring up business that hasn't been warned. Likewise, debate shall be confined to the question. Please raise your hand to be recognized, and when recognized, you should give your name and speak directly into the microphone as I indicated. If members of the public wish to be heard, please step to the podium in the back and raise your hand, and I will try to focus on that podium as well. This meeting is broadcast live on BCTV Channel 10, on Comcast and Southern Vermont Cable, as well as streaming live at BrattleboroTV.org. You can watch the rebroadcast anytime on Channel 10 over the next 2 weeks or online at BrattleboroTV.org. Thank you for speaking again into the microphone so that viewers at home can hear you. This meeting is being interpreted for the deaf and hard of hearing by Elizabeth Fox, Corey Brunner, Janet Dickinson, and Janice Whiteman. Today's refreshment and lunches are provided by members of the BUHS Exchange Program, and they will be here until after the lunch break. You should have order forms. Please provide and take those. They should be in your packet. Please get those order forms in to the lunch counter as soon as you can. I've been asked to remind you that in the back of the room, the 2016 town meeting legislative report, it's either in the back of the room, maybe on your chairs, is being distributed for your consideration. And also Senator Doyle's annual town meeting day survey, which he has done for 40 or 45 years, is in the back. It's the blue sheet, and I have been requested to ask you to please fill those out and get those back as well. Now, the bathrooms, I'm sort of generally familiar with, but back this way to the right, there's some in this hall, or you can go down to the left, and there's some on the right, or you can go down to the right, and there's some on the left. So I think if you explore the hall a little bit, you will find plenty of restrooms. At this point, the chair would call upon Ms. O'Connor for preliminary motion.
It actually is, oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the following persons be authorized to sit in the reserved section with the Select Board and school directors. Town Manager Peter Elwell, Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland, Town Attorney Robert Fisher, School Board Superintendent Ron Staley, and Business Manager Frank Rucker.
Is there a second? Second. It is. I'm sorry. Oh, there's an, all right, let's get the second first, all right? So is there a second? Seconded. Is there discussion? Ms. Stahl-Tyler.
Would like to actually add on Lyle Holiday as my curriculum coordinator. I couldn't find the switch, sorry. So I'd like to also ask for Lyle Holiday to be able to sit up here with us. She's the curriculum coordinator and the new superintendent as of July 1st.
Is there a second to Ms. Stahl-Tyler's motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion with regard to the proposed amendment to add Lyle Holiday to the list? If not, all those in favor of adding Lyle Holiday to the list, please indicate by rising. You may be seated. Any opposed? And now, once again, we return to the basic motion, which I move. It has been moved and seconded that the following persons be authorized to sit in the reserve section with the Select Board and the school directors: Town Manager Peter Elwell, Town Attorney Robert Fisher, School Superintendent Ron Staley, Business Administrator Frank Rucker, and Lyle Holliday. All those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. Any opposed? And those individuals may join the meeting at this time. I guess they're here already. We have a second preliminary motion, and I would call upon David Gartenstein.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator.
Good morning.
I move that the electronic media be permitted to remain in the reserved section.
Is there a second? Any discussion? If so, all those in favor of the motion to allow the electronic media to be permitted to remain in the reserved section, please rise. You may be seated. Any opposed? And you've approved the electronic media in the reserved section. So now we get into the actual business of the town meeting, and the chair, Article 1 is to see what salaries the town school district will pay to its school board members. The chair will recognize Mr. Roche.
I move that the legal voters of the town of Brattleboro School District authorize its Board of School Directors to pay the following amounts for the ensuing fiscal year. To its school directors, the sum of $3,000 each, except that the chairwoman shall be paid the sum of $5,000.
Is there a second? Second. It has been moved and seconded that the legal voters of the town of Brattleboro School District authorize its Board of School Directors to pay the following amounts for the ensuing fiscal year to its school directors, the sum of $3,000 each, except that the chairperson shall be paid the sum of $5,000. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have adopted Article 1. Article 2, to see if the town school district will authorize its town school directors to borrow money in anticipation of taxes. The chair recognizes Mr. Truhan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the legal voters of the town. I turned it off. Oh, did you turn it off? Anyway, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the legal voters of the town of Brattleboro School District authorize its Board of School Directors to borrow money pending the receipt of taxes not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year by the issuance of its notes or orders payable not later than 1 year from the date thereof.
Is there a second to the motion? It has been moved and seconded that the legal voters of the town of Brattleboro School District authorize its Board of School Directors to borrow money pending the receipt of taxes and not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year by issuance of its notes and orders payable not later than 1 year from the date thereof. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have adopted Article 2. Article 3, to see if the town school district will authorize the district to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont and the United States government. The chair recognizes Mr. Scholes.
I move that the legal voters of the town of Brattleboro School District authorize its Board of School Directors to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont and the United States government.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the legal voters of the town school district be authorized to accept and expend categorical grants and aid received from the state of Vermont and the United States government. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have approved Article 3. Article 4, shall general obligation bonds or notes of the Brattleboro Town School District in an amount not to exceed $350,000, subject to reduction from future state and federal grant and aid, and the application of future reserves payable over a term not to exceed 10 years, be issued for the purpose of making heating system improvements to the Green Street School, the estimated cost of such improvements being $946,000. Now, this article is the one article that we have today that shall be voted upon by Australian ballot. You may pick your ballots up at the back from the ballot clerks at or anytime after 10 o'clock. The polls will open at 10 a.m. Polls will remain open for 30 minutes after the meeting has been recessed. Because this is a ballot issue, we cannot offer any amendments, but we certainly have the right to debate it. So I will open it up to the floor. Is there any debate on Article 4? Hearing none, we will then move on to Article 5. Yes, Mr. Barber.
This is just to clarify it, especially for me. The polls are going to stay open 10 minutes after
30 minutes.
30 minutes?
Yes.
After the recess. Are you meaning by that the final recess at the end of the day? What about the lunch recess?
It'll be open, the polls will be open continuously from 10 o'clock until 30 minutes after the final recess at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Which might be before lunch. No. Dr. Slawinski.
Walter Slawinski, could you please explain to me and others why this is subject to Australian ballot?
That, Dr. Slawinski, I will treat as a request to interrogate a member of the school board. Is there someone who wishes to address it, Mr. Staley?
Frank would like to.
Okay. Mr. Rucker.
Yes, so there's a provision in statute. There are two provisions specifically in the Vermont statutes that guide school boards in the format for a vote on a public bond, and we're following a statute that enables us to evaluate this project, its associated cash flows within a 10-year term, and then provide the warning article as written. So on, I think it's on page 9 of your report, there's background on Article 4, and the format of that explanation of the article is designed around the statute. The other format is for much larger projects, bond voting that you may recall in the past for, say, the Brattleboro Union High School. This format is a little simpler. It's intended to be presented at a annual meeting with discussion.
Further discussion concerning Article 4. Mr. Phillips.
Steve Phillips, District 3. I have two questions. One, do we need a motion for this?
No, because it's a bond vote.
Okay.
Steve, yeah.
So if the whole body doesn't want to take it up, doesn't matter, it goes forward anyway?
Yes.
Okay.
I will actually defer that. I'm quite certain that's the case, but I will defer to Mr. Fisher on that. I'm sure. Is Robert here?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So the confusing thing about the explanation about future reserves, can anyone explain what that means? Thank you.
Yes. So we've applied for several grants to fund this project. One of them is certain in that we've got a letter of commitment from the Clean Energy Development Fund for $100,000. We have two other pending applications. One is $50,000 to the USDA. We had hoped to have word as of today. We did call yesterday to see if we could get that confirmation, and they indicated everything is on track, but they wouldn't confirm. I guess they have a meeting next week to determine. There's also a third grant that we haven't assumed that we will get, but I do think it's likely that we will. It's a renewable energy credit that's also administered through the Clean Energy Development Fund. So the article is written such that if we do receive additional funds and/or a reserve, then we will reduce the amount to borrow. A reference to reserves is that if we have a surplus or a deficit on the capital fund projects, and it changes the fund balance, or which is also referred to as a reserve, we will use that. Our objective is to borrow as least amount as possible, but no more than $350,000.
Further debate. Mr. Montgomery.
Tad Montgomery, it mentions in the sort of pro forma there that other energy efficiency improvements will be made to the tune of roughly $100,000. Could you just briefly describe what those are?
Yes, and I did add a handout. Hopefully, folks, some of you may have had a chance to pick them up at the back of the room on the table. But yes, the largest component of additional improvements is a window thermal improvement, window and door thermal improvements. It's estimated that those projects could be nearly $50,000, and they will have a significant impact on the R value of the building and will reduce energy consumption, the pellet and the backup propane. That's the primary. There is a completely new control system that's also part of this project that will do a much better job than a current system in terms of modulating outside air, exchanging the required air, with the heating loads as outside temperature changes. So those are the two primary additional improvements.
Further debate on Article 4, the Australian ballot vote. Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Frank, how much money is in the unrestricted fund balance of the town school?
We have that in the annual report here. Let me turn to the page on that. Yep, it's page 139. And you see in the middle of that page, The fund balance recap. So we have a total in the general operating fund of $915,178. However, there is a deficit in the capital fund as of June of 2016, the most recent year that was just audited. And when you follow the figures down on page 139 to the bottom there, you see a proposed use of fund balance of $130,000, which would leave $785,000 in the general fund. And then we address the Academy project that was completed last year, an energy project, and it funds the capital fund, all part of a plan, and it leaves $377,000 in the capital fund.
Thank you.
Further discussion with regard to Article 4? If not, we will turn to Article 5. Shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $14,547,425, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year? It is estimated that the proposed budget, if approved, will result in educational spending of $16,960 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 10.9% higher than spending for the current year. The chair recognizes Ms. Stahl-Tyler.
Morning. I move that the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $14,547,425, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $16,960 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 10.9% higher than spending for the current year.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $14,547,425, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $16,960 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 10.9% higher than spending for the current year. Ms. Stahl-Tyler, do you wish to be heard on the motion?
Just a couple brief comments.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, did I ask for a second? Yes, I did. So go ahead.
So I think we had a very well-attended meeting on Wednesday night, and a lot of questions were brought forth. One of the things that comes out of the budget that's clear in this motion, and the reason for this is language that's mandated by the state, so that we all see exactly what we're paying per pupilized pupil, and that we all see if it's higher or lower than last year. And that's a great idea, I think, on the part of the state. The conundrum comes that the budgets are not exactly comparable from one year to another. This particular budget has a couple things that's different in it. That we have moved because of an accounting mandate. We've moved some money that comes in for special education no longer is in this budget. It's in the supervisor union budget. So to me, when I look at the budgets, my first question is always, what does it mean to the taxpayer, and what does it, at the same time, what does it mean to the education level to our children? I feel like I'm repeating some things that I also wrote in a column about a month ago, so perhaps if you've already read that, you can just take a brief moment of daydreaming off to someplace else. But really, the budget, when you look at it, you have a contractual obligation as salaries go up. Teacher salaries increase by 2.4%, benefits by 4.6%. Staff benefits and salary make up 62% of our entire budget, but staffing has remained largely the same. We went through on our presentation on Wednesday night to talk about why we've chosen to add on 2 staff members and the hesitation the board had in doing that, because it's desperately easy to add and much harder to take away. And we've talked to you about the goals that we've had and the laser focus we've had on poverty and making sure that we're helping those children achieve to the highest level that we can give them for a good start in life. And so we have added on one staff position, which is a social worker. We've also decreased one of our part-time counselor positions. And then we've added on a technology integration specialist that would be at a Green Street and Oak Grove schools, and that's a shared position. Those are the only two additions. Otherwise, this budget is largely level funded with the same intent to do the work that we've seen give results, and this board has been working alongside with the administrators to come up with creative ways to do that. And as you've heard in the past, the administrators have been recognized throughout the state and even the nation for a lot of the innovative thought processes and ways they've brought that to bear fruit. One of the things, too, I end with in my comments that I wrote for you all, so again, you've probably all read it, but to reiterate that as a board, we're all immensely proud of those that work with our children and for their dedication and their compassion, their diligence and their determination for every child to achieve to his or her fullest potential. And I don't feel like it's hyperbole to say that lives are being changed. We tried to show that specifically with some of the interventions and the work that's been done with the literacy, for example, that we showed on Wednesday. And while this is all carried out within the schools and not directly by every one of us in this room, the townspeople are fundamental in this financial support. And in that way, money truly does make the world go round. And so we'll entertain any questions you have on that budget.
Further debate or further questions? Further debate or questions? Yes.
John Megas Russell, District 1. I was unable to attend on Wednesday, and my question is about food services, physical education, music, and arts, and what you know about that and what you can provide us, just as a small illustrative view of what the kids are getting in that sense.
So let's see if we heard you. There were several things, right? So food services was your first one? Yep. So we did have one slide on that talks about one of our focuses has been on nutrition, and one of our greatest successes, I guess I'd put it, for this last year was that we were able to do the Universal Meals Program. So every child in the Brattleboro town schools every child is able to go get breakfast, lunch, and an after-school snack if they're still in the building, which is substantial enough to kind of supplement or even replace a supper. And they don't have to show free and reduced lunch status anymore. And that's something, by the way, that is kind of an envy point for the folks in the outlying towns, because as it is right now, they are not able to get that, and they would love to have that, particularly in Guilford and Putney. Your next question was on physical education and arts. So I can give a quick answer, I guess, but other people might be able to give more. All the children do have physical education at least, I think, once or twice a week. I'm looking back to twice. They're holding up fingers in the back. This is good. And arts goes once per week for every child, and music is also available. There's vocal music and then instrumental music as of 4th grade up. And those instrumental music, I think, meets twice a week, once for lessons and once for group lessons, depending on the age. When they're first starting out, they don't try to put them all together in a group. That'd be hard. And vocal music, I believe, is once a week. And then they all have all schools sing. Does that answer the question? Okay.
George Carville, District 1. I regret, I was at the meeting the other night, and I regret I didn't see this then, but I was a little disturbed on the Finance Committee report of a decrease of nearly $250,000 for art, music, and PE instruction. What are we losing?
Frank would like to answer that one.
Yes, This is another just an accounting change. So if we bring your attention to the budget document, what we're trying to do is associate costs with schools as opposed to putting costs in a district-wide group where it's harder to associate at the school level. So just very briefly, we can identify these assignments. So you've noted on page 142 the decline there in the itinerant salary, which is the art, PE, and music budget. So you've noted that. But there's an equivalent increase in each of the school budgets under the salary items that is simply associating the personnel that are dedicated to these specific school locations. And essentially we're reducing the district-wide budget and associating costs where they're being delivered. So page 144 is the beginning of the Green Street budget. Jill mentioned that our average salaries are up about 2%, but when you look at the Green Street line there, about 2/3 of the way down, you see the salary line there is up 6.9. It's assigning the phys ed and art that is directly associated with the Green Street school. And then again on page one, I think it's, let's see, 147 is it? We have the Oak Grove school. And actually Oak Grove starts on page 147 at the very top. You see the same thing, a larger increase in salaries than what Jill had mentioned, even though the actual salary is being paid at that rate. And then on page 149 is the Academy School. So you won't see this sort of change next year because we're aligning these costs now as we go.
Hi, Margaret Atkinson, District 2. Just a clarifying question about the article versus what's published in the budget. From my understanding, it shows that the proposed budget of $14,547,000 is about $1.4 million less than last year's, and that it is actually 9.2% less than last year's budget. So even though the article says we're spending more per equalized pupil, we are actually spending less overall. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And Jill referred to what the legislature requires the board to publish in terms of a cost per student figure as well, which is substantially different, as you know. But I'm glad you raised the question because it's pretty confusing to the general public. Yes, the budget is actually down 9%, but cost per student is up substantially. We spent a fair amount of time addressing that issue on Wednesday, so we won't repeat that unless folks are interested, but in maybe a couple of sentences, what it relates to is the school district must utilize a statistic that the state captures around student enrollment. They equalize that data, and then we use that data to calculate cost per student. And there's a substantial difference between our actual enrollment, which is relatively level in the last couple of years, versus the state statistics that incorporate new legislation, primarily Act 166, which is a pre-K law, and then also Act 46, which is a governance reform law. Those two acts substantially changed the computation of equalized students, and it's caused this anomaly. Last year we felt that our statistic was overstated, and we had reserves in the budget. We created reserves to pay for capital projects that we're now asking you to consider. This year we feel that the equalized student is understated, If you took the 2 years and averaged them, it's probably about right. But this is what we have to work with as part of the funding law. So last year's cost per student was probably understated. This year it's overstated. But the bottom line is taxes are estimated to be down. And ultimately that's what affects the funding to our residents.
Further discussion? I think in the back, Mr. Gartenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you say how much taxes are anticipated to be down, please?
Yes, so we have a schedule on that. At this point, it's estimated to be down approximately 0.5 cent. That is on page 140. It's a relatively difficult schedule to read, but at the very bottom, this is a state required format. But on the bottom of the page, I increased the font. And we have the current tax rate. This would be the school equalized, CLA adjusted tax rate, and this would be pre-K through 12, so this is not a sub-component of taxes, but it includes the high school. You see $1.622 this year, and it's projected to be $1.615 in the new year. That's down 0.7 of a penny, or 0.4 of 1%.
Further discussion? Ms. Tarnas.
Catherine Turnus, District 3. I don't think the people in this room are in alternative reality here. I'd like to know if this budget is taking into consideration what's going to be coming down the pike from the federal government. And we all know who's running the education there, so what have we done to be able to counteract her directives?
The school board is interrogated, or perhaps Mr. Staley.
So, okay, yeah. So this budget was warned way before any of the federal, what's it, the skinny budget that they're calling it. For Title IIA, that's the probably most prominent reduction that we see from federal cuts, and that essentially is professional development money. For the overall district, Wyndham Southeast, it would be about $300,000. And what we fund with that money, partial funding for 4 positions, and those are the curriculum and assessment people, our literacy and math coaches, and professional development money for teachers. So we did not anticipate that with this budget, but I will say that when we think about the whole district and this budget that has a reserve account, this effect will not happen for another year. So I think we'll be in good shape as long as none of those other things come to.
Further questions or debate on Article 5, the school budget? Mr. Bosworth.
My question is sort of related to that. The 2 new positions, I absolutely support the social worker position becoming part of our base budget. The other one, the technology integration specialist, I can see where that's a real benefit. If we, in this coming year, fiscal year 18, with the taxes being pretty much even, it's easy to absorb that. So my worry is, future years, if we do have to sustain cuts like that, something like the integrated specialist, are we going to, the integrated technology specialist, are we going to have to take a look at that, something like that in the future?
Mr. Saley is further interrogated.
I would say we've been pretty fortunate. We've got a great teaching staff, but a veteran staff. And so we have kind of an ongoing turnover rate that I think in the future has allowed us to hire some great new teachers. It's not intended to have less experience, but it just happens to be that case. And we save some money through the hiring process. And so I would anticipate, next year, 2 years down the road, we'll be okay in terms of those turnover rates and being able to maintain an excellent staff as well as those positions.
The question is, shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $14,547,425, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year? It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $16,960 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 10.9% higher than spending for the current year. Further debate or questions? Mr. Fallion.
Peter Fallion, District 3. The report was excellent, and I fully support the positions, particularly the social worker. I was struck in reading your fine report how devastating the opioid crisis and all of its related tentacles is impacting. I don't ever recall a school report where you come right in black and white and talk about how concerning this is to all of you and to all the teaching staff. So my question is, as we anticipate funding this social worker for Academy School, can we anticipate, in a positive way, can we anticipate social workers working in the other schools as a way of moving beyond the paradigm of just working within the school system? And it sounds to me like by bringing in a social worker, you are in fact bringing in other forces within the society and the community to help address a problem that's very real. So my question is, can we anticipate additional support?
So I think that's a really great question, and one that if I mentioned it on Wednesday night, and if anyone has a chance to go back and watch our February meeting on BCTV, where we hear directly from the counselors and the social workers and how they're working as well with the HCRS clinicians and with the existing agencies around town. It's eye-opening, a bit devastating, and very much hopeful all at the same time. So yes, that was one of our board questions. David Scholes has been very persistent his entire time on the board of looking at how do we integrate and work with existing agencies, and has been pushing for that. And I think our administrators have been pushing as well. Mark is one that's been talking about, this is a big problem. And he's been sounding this bell for a long time. So, and our administrators have reached out and on their own initiative and gone out and looked for that. It's my question and our board's question was, well, so if we put in this year Academy, next year, are we going to need one in Green Street, or can we start stretching this person? Or the presentation that they gave us explained that the idea is to be able to coordinate the efforts between all three schools and not necessarily have to have a social worker in each school, but clearly the counselors are already working hand in hand with the social worker, even though she's positioned at Academy School.
Further questions? Dr. Tortolani.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bob Tortolani, Section 2. I just stand at this time to thank the teachers and the administrators of our school system for all they do, not only helping to optimize the educational performance of the students, but also because the American family, including our families in in Brattleboro and Windham County are under so much stress at this point. I think the teachers and the social workers and administrators are playing a much bigger role than they used to have to play in the school, and they provide so much support to our kids, and that has such a lot to do with their performance and with their success in life. I also think it can take a toll on them. We should be aware of the fact that our teachers are really working hard. We can never pay them enough. We just want to thank them. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate or questions? Ms. Stewart.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. State Representative Valerie Stewart. I just want to echo Dr. Tortolani's remarks. I think you all are doing a rock star job during a really hard time. I served on the Education Committee for 4 years. I worked closely with Frank and Ron and Jill and David, and I just think that it's clear that the wave of the future has to be exactly what we're talking about, which is a social worker, because as Dr. Tortolani said, the schools are picking up so much more of the slack that is being dropped for many, many terrible reasons and good reasons, like 2 working parents, et cetera. So I just want to applaud your hard work. It was one of the hardest things practically I feel like I've ever done serving on the Education Committee, because we have such high needs even before the opioid crisis, but we are a small state and we have limited resources. But the greatest resource we have is working together, and I think we are going to be doing a better and better job of that as a state, because we're going to have to. And I think this is one ray of light in the big shining array of stars that is Vermont. And I just want to say we're living in the best of times and the worst of times, but all indications, in my view, show that we are moving forward to a very positive future, because so many ways we're working together more effectively. I'll talk later about what I'm doing on the Commerce Committee, and we're working really hard there too. Thank you.
Further debate on Article 5. The question is, shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $547,425, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in educational spending of $16,960 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 10.9% higher than spending for the current year. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. Those opposed, please rise. And you have unanimously approved Article 5. The chair at this time would recognize Ms. Stahl-Tyler.
Thank you. I have a couple quick things that I'd like to do. We have some folks that have been faithfully serving us here for a long time and who are not going to continue. So, sorry. There we go. What's that?
Make sure it's the right person. Your name.
The right person? I don't think there's any of the right people that should be leaving up here. So first, I'd like to recognize Todd Roach, who's doing, he's leaving us after 3 years of service. So thank you, Todd. And then I'd also like to recognize Mark Truhan, who's been with us for 10 years. And the whole time I've been on the board, Mark has been here in a steady voice for all sorts of things and all sorts of commentaries, not all of which you guys get to always hear, but certainly has been a force for thinking and rational thought. Thank you, Mark. Does this come out? And so the last one that I want to actually read is from the Brattleboro Town School District, and on behalf of all of you as well, this award is presented in recognition and appreciation of your dedication to the students and families of the Brattleboro Town School District during your 15 years of service as Superintendent of Schools. Mr. Ron Staley. And we welcome, as we said earlier, Lyle Holliday is coming in, and she'll be on board with us in July. She was part of an extensive superintendent search, which we did internally first, but it was overwhelmingly positive. All of the people, I think it was over 89 stakeholders or people in the community, in the schools, and teachers, staff, board members at all levels, overwhelmingly positive, and happy to bring on Lyle and hoping for a rather seamless transition.
Now, before the school board vacates the area on the stage, Mr. Staley, did you have any further discussion that you wish to, or do you prefer to wait until the conclusion of the meeting?
Yeah, I think we would like to spend a little time on an update on Act 46, and I believe Jill would like to do that.
Okay, normally, because that's not germane to any article that is currently before us, directly germane to any article that is before us, the chair would rule that we can suspend the rules if you choose to move to do so, which requires a 2/3 vote for the purpose of allowing the school board to provide an update on Act 250 and to hear any other motions or comments related to 46, excuse me, 46. Okay, so there is a motion. Let me read the motion just so you're very clear. This is a motion to suspend the rules, requires 2/3. It's been moved and seconded to allow the school board to provide an update on Act 46 and to hear any other motion or comments related to Act 46. Requires 2/3 approval, so we're going to have to do this by division. All those in, Mr. Franks, point of order?
Yes, sir. Tom Franks, District 3, point of order. You mentioned motions. Since it's not on the article, would any motion be binding or?
No, this would be non-binding because this is under other business. Yes, Dr. Copens.
Is it possible to amend that motion to limit the amount of...
Yes. And please state your, everyone should state their name.
Stuart Copens, District 3. Is it possible to amend that motion to limit the time for discussion of Article 46 to a period of not more than an hour and a half?
Or 30 minutes?
Yes, I mean, we can, again, it requires 2/3 vote, and what you are doing is you're putting a time limit, you're asking that we put a time limit on the motion. I think the best way to do this, Dr. Copens, is to, in two pieces. I think we ought to first determine whether or not we're going to suspend the rules, okay, and hear this other business. And then secondly, you would then thereafter be at liberty to make a motion to limit debate to 1.5 hours. If we can. Okay, so whatever you wish to do. But unless there is objection, I would like to take this up in two separate parts. Let's do the first part first. And that is, does this body wish to take up other business to hear a report on Act 46 and any other non-binding motions and comments relating to Act 46? And that requires a 2/3 vote. So I want to have a division on that first, unless there's objection. Yes, Mr. Agave.
It's my understanding that there was going to be a request, and so I want to check whether that still is happening, that there be a discussion on Act 46 at the end of this meeting is one of the last things we do. If that was still going to be requested, then this information should wait until then. Otherwise, there will be a tremendous incoherence in the discussion, since one party will be offering their side of it, and people in the audience will be jumping out of their seats with questions. And so it means it's going to be a full discussion now. And if we're going to have one later, it should all be in one place.
That's well taken, Mr. Agave, and it is the chair's intent that this only be debated at one point, and if you approve by 2/3 suspending the rules now, the opportunity to debate and present any non-binding resolutions would be now, not at the end of the meeting. We'll only take it up one time today. And so therefore, if you wish to be heard at this time, and if you wish to hear a report from Mr. Staley and the school board on Act 46, the question is, shall we suspend the rules now to do so? Requires 2/3, and I'm going to ask everyone who wishes to suspend the rules and to hear the report and discuss Act 46 at this time to please rise and remain standing while you are counted. Do you have the number, Jane? Okay, if you could give me the number, please. All right. Okay, yeah, we'll go to the next. All right, you may be seated. All those opposed to suspending the rules and proceeding with the discussion of Act 46 at this time, please rise and remain standing while you are counted. Thanks, Jane. The ayes, 88, the noes, 36, and you have agreed to suspend the rules by 2/3 vote and to hear non-binding discussion and non-binding motions relative to Act 46. I would suggest to Dr. Copens that maybe we wait, see how this goes for a bit before you decide how long to limit debate. If that's okay. Point of order, Mr. Agavi?
I think it's important so that it doesn't become advantageous for one side or another, or to have to call for the debate to end, to set an amount of time, and then when that time is reached, to agree to extend it if we wish.
Well, are you suggesting, Mr. Agavi, a time along the lines that Dr. Copens just did? Are you, that is it?
I don't know how to figure that out. I would start with a half an hour, and then, but I don't know exactly.
Dr. Copens, do you wish to renew your motion? We can take up your motion.
Yeah, I would be interested in interrogating.
Well, wait a minute. Do you, first of all, do you, I have to take one thing at a time. Let me just call on Mr. Phillips for a minute. Go ahead, Steve.
Steve Phillips, District 3. Do we not each have the right to ask to cease debate as part of our rules at any time?
That is correct, Mr. Phillips. So we can always end the debate.
So we could just reserve it, and yet I don't want to agree to go for an hour and a half, because we will use an hour and a half whether we need it or not. So let's just keep that in mind.
I think Mr. Phillips' suggestion is a wise one. You have voted to proceed with this discussion, and the chair would recognize Mr. Staley.
Yeah, I think Jill is going to provide the overview.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you to Andy Davis for a heads up that this was probably coming up, and prepared a few things yesterday for you. So there's kind of a long saga of Act 46 here in the Supervisory Union, but I do promise to move you through this relatively quickly, I hope. First, I want to start by recognizing the Brattleboro town representatives and the townspeople who have attended all of our community forums, contacted us directly, or have been following the planning on BCTV. We have appreciated your thoughtful questions and attitudes, your respect for the work we've been doing. And in some communities, this has not been the case. So speaking for Mark, Kim, and myself, who are the three who have been attending these meetings on behalf of the Brattleboro Town School Board, we wanted to thank you, and we hope that the tone of this meeting continues in that same vein, echoing what Mr. Wheelock pointed out at the beginning. So let's start at the beginning of this process. This started in November of 2015. And all the boards of all of us in the Supervisory Union all signed the same agreement to enter into a committee to study the various options. We had no preconceived plan to come to any one type of a merger, or indeed if it would be feasible to merge. Matter of fact, if you ask any of us on the committee, I think we would all say that we've changed our minds several times on what's best and how to go forward. Brattleboro, Dummerston, Guilford, Putney, and Vernon all just agreed that we'd meet and we'd work through the possible scenarios. Since then, Act 46 Study Committee has met around 90 hours as a group, plus many more hours in subcommittees, individual readings, and communications. All throughout the 17 months, rapidly closing in on 18 now, the representatives from each board brought back updates to their individual boards. And then the individual boards sent their thoughts back again to the study committee. Each town has also held at least 2 forums on Act 46 during this time frame, some more. It's been a continuous process of listening, trying to address the concerns raised, and looking at what's best for the children in our supervisory union. Remember that the law requires us to either merge or to prove that we are equitable. So we've looked hard at our existing systems, our differences right now, and our opportunities if we were merged. As a matter of fact, on Thursday night, after our presentation to you on Wednesday, the study committee met again. We all, once again, reviewed the inequities under our current structure, and we all agreed, every one of us on the study committee, unanimously, that right now, we do not offer the same needed opportunities to all of our children in the supervisory union. Two easy examples of that would be universal meals, which you just heard about for Brattleboro and no one else has, or tutoring and academic support, summer school. These are not offered equitably and equally throughout our supervisory union. Also on Thursday night, we reviewed the various merger options one more time. We've done this several times in several different meetings. Looking at this fast, there's the preferred structure, which is sometimes also called the accelerated, which is a supervisory district. This is the merger option that we've talked with you about before, and it's the one that the study committee feels best meets the goals of the law. This would be pre-K through 12, one district, and it would have included all 5 of our towns coming together. However, to do this, Vernon would have to give up school choice. And when that became clear, Vernon left the discussions and consulted their lawyers. Seeing Vernon's actions, the study committee respected Vernon, and we did not push for a vote in May of 2016. In August, Vernon themselves voted to ask to be released from the Brattleboro Union High School. And Vernon strongly believes this is their only way to keep school choice and to also allow the rest of the towns in the supervisory union to proceed with a vote on a merger. However, to leave, it requires release by the rest of us. And we all know the outcome of vote number 1, which was in December. All of us said yes, except for the town of Dummerston. Dummerston rejected the request by Vernon. And so there was a petition, and they re-voted in Dummerston in February, and once again, Dummerston rejected Vernon's request. And then, and this is where it really starts to seem like some sort of a made-for-TV soap opera to me, Vernon said that they would file an injunction to stop any consideration of a regional educational district or a modified union district, all sorts of ways to merge, if they were included in any merger plans in any way. So we could walk you through every one of the other options, but I think you could just watch BCTV's recording of our meeting on Thursday. And here's the quick summary. Since Dummerston refused to let Vernon out, and Vernon will not warn a vote with them on it in any way, and they will file an injunction against the rest of us if we do, all other merger options under Act 46 are out. We can't move forward under Act 46 because we can't dissolve the Union High School. Now, there is a law trying to work its way through the Vermont legislature, which would allow Vernon to leave the supervisory union without the approval of the rest of us. There's a big however with that, though, and it's time. So far, the law has only made it through the first committee on one side, and it has a lot of work to go through before it would be a law, and it would have to be signed into law before it could be utilized, and we have to warn a vote with 45 days notice, and we have to have the vote done by June 30th of this year. So when you look at the calendar, the reality is pretty clear. Barring some sort of a miracle, there's no way for us to move forward with the vote before June 30th. And perhaps you've heard something called the alternative structure, and there's some confusion because some of the language used in various parts by different people in this calls all sorts of things alternatives. There is an alternative structure allowed under Act 46, and that does have a deadline further out, July 1st, 2019. Please know and understand that that does not include any tax incentives, which have been estimated to be in the range of about $1 million, that number you've heard before, for our supervisory union taxpayers in the aggregate for the first year only. Remember, too, that that's what we lost when we couldn't bring the vote to you in 2016, but that also includes 8, 6, 4, and 2 for the next years. So if all of those tax incentives would have totaled up to somewhere around $2 million for all of us in the aggregate in our supervisory union. Those are gone unless something happens before July 1st. It also does not stop the loss of small school grants, which are necessary and well received funds for the towns of Guilford and Dummerston. Nor does anything give any transition funding, all of which the study committee members wanted to take advantage of if we could. This alternative structure must be a supervisory union with member districts. The onus is on us to show that these other models are better, basically splitting the union up into other districts. But we can't do that without dissolving the union high school. So this is what we are now, right now. Except that if you look at what the law asks for, we already fail on a lot of levels already. One, we don't consider ourselves to be collectively responsible for the education of pre-K through 12 in all the towns. We're not sitting here talking about what's going on in Dummerston, Guilford, Vernon, or Putney, or even the high school. We're responsible for Brattleboro, and every town right now is taking care of our own. Part of the law is that in any sort of things, governance under Act 46, is that we're all taking care of everybody. Two, we don't operate in a manner that maximizes efficiencies through economies of scale and flexible management, transfer, and sharing of non-financial resources. That's the exact language. Right now, we don't share non-financial resources. In fact, if we want to share staff between districts, we actually have 7 different employers throughout the supervisory union. We have 7 different sets of accounting books. We also have no way to leave children in their current school if they move during the school year. These are things we've talked about with you before that would happen under a merger. We would have to have the smallest number of member school districts practicable achieved by a merger of districts with similar operating and tuitioning patterns. Right now, again, we're all on our own. And those are the requirements of an alternative structure. We do meet the 4th requirement, have to have an average number of students 1,100 or more. That part we meet as a supervisory union right now. To me, here's the most interesting part when people say consider the alternatives. We just spent 17 months looking at exactly those issues, with all of the board's representative and all of the board's members taking that information back to their boards and the comments and suggestions, which we then incorporated. It's 17 months of work. And folks, just in case anyone's wondering or would like to have some interesting reading material, Kim has the body of knowledge from that work. It's also on, actually there's 31 pages I couldn't print out last night, they refused to print. And there's more. There's all the BCTV meetings, and there's all the videos of all the presentations that's gone on. And then there's all the individual board meetings where this has been discussed. So, yes, there are ways of moving forward and merging in smaller groups. The study committee has talked about that several times over the past year and a half. But they don't meet the Act 46 goals, and it does not protect us from being assigned to another district later. Right now, we're waiting for the State Board of Education to give us some guidance as to how to move forward. How do we proceed with the impasse that we have? And come November 1st, the state decides for us how to merge and how to move forward. So I guess at this point, we'll take anybody's questions.
Is there any further questions, comments, or debate relative to Act 46? Mr. Dimes.
Kurt Dimes, District 2. I'm curious about the effects of the possible withdrawal of Vernon or possibly any other district on the payments of the school bond, the school construction bond. If they were to withdraw from the district, how would the Brattleboro be compensated for or would there be a loss of their payments toward the bonds on the school? That's my question.
Member of the administration is interrogated. Mr. Rucker?
Well, at this point, as Jill has illustrated, it's not an option. So it's unlikely to come to that. But even if it was, Vernon historically has always had choice, and they've chosen to send about 80% of their high school population to Brattleboro Union. We would assume that that would continue. And under that relationship, they would pay tuition, and that tuition would cover the debt cost. So there would be no impact to the other towns. Some folks have pointed out, yes, but isn't there a legal liability ability in terms of liquidating debt? And that would come down to if the Union High School was sold, and that is a highly unlikely scenario. So under any scenario, there's no likely impact on the other towns.
Not to worry then.
Not to worry.
Further questions or debate? Mr. Davis.
Thank you for this opportunity. I do have a non-binding resolution.
Okay.
Would this be an appropriate time? I'd like to speak to it, but not till it's appropriate time.
You've already given me a copy, Mr. Davis.
I have.
You can go ahead and read your resolution.
Yes, I will. Whereas the Brattleboro Town Schools have not, as of this date, entered into a school merger as directed by the Vermont Legislature under Act 46, now therefore be it resolved that we, the town meeting representatives of Brattleboro, direct the Brattleboro Town School Board to explore, and I'm saying the school board, not the study group, the school board to explore the alternative structures in Section 9 of Act 46, referred to as self-evaluation, meetings, and proposal. It's on page 17 of Act 46. And be it further resolved that we direct the Brattleboro Town School Board to hold at least 2 public hearings for the purpose of exploring this option for complying with Act 46. I'd like to speak to it when appropriate.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded the following non-binding resolution. Whereas the Brattleboro Town Schools have not, as of this date, entered into a school merger as directed by the Vermont Legislature under Act 46, now therefore be it resolved that we, the town meeting representatives of Brattleboro, direct the Brattleboro Town School Board to explore the alternative structure in Section 9 of Act 46, referred to as self-evaluation, meetings, and proposal. And be it further resolved that we direct the Brattleboro Town School Board to hold at least 2 public hearings for the purpose of exploring this option for complying with Act 46. The chair would recognize Mr. Davis.
Thank you for that very concise history of where we are. That's really clear. I think it's important we all hear that yet again. As you point out, the study group is at an impasse. I think the word used on Thursday night was that it's stuck. And the reason for passing where we are now to the Department of Education is for advice. The way forward with options that the study group can look at is very uncertain and very unclear. The legislature itself is struggling to modify Act 46 to accommodate particular situations around the state. And there's a bill being discussed there now. I think it's House 122. Even these adjustments do not point to a definite path forward. They're still in flux. If Brattleboro, as an individual town, decides to do nothing at this point, then we are subject to the discretion of the Vermont Department of Education to determine what kind of merger or structure we belong to, which would include the Brattleboro Town Schools, our middle and high school. There is a path forward that is built into Act 46. Section 9 is designed for individual town boards to enter into self-examination and propose a structure that will accomplish the goals of Act 46. I don't think we can discuss what's possible under that here today. The goals of Act 46 are primarily equity in student educational opportunity and sustainable cost. The proposed structure could be something as familiar as a supervisory union but not the same thing we have now. It can't be, as you pointed out, exactly what we have now. And I don't think anyone believes that change is not coming. The resolution I've just read does not limit any board or study group exploration of any other legal options under Act 46. It's designed as a way to deal with the current impasse in a constructive and open way. That's all I have. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Mr. Davis's motion? Yes, please. Go ahead, Ms. Stoll-Tyler.
So I hear what Andy's saying, and it all sounds very rational, except that it's what we've been doing. I'm confused as to what the difference is in what you're asking for and what the study committee has already been doing, and taking it back to the local school boards throughout the supervisory union and talking to the supervisory union members as it is. Why a resolution to continue doing what we're doing?
Mr. Davis is interrogated, should he choose to be.
What we have been doing has brought us to an impasse. And the law gives other options that are not study group options. And that's my answer.
Further questions or debate with regard to Mr. Davis's motion? Mr. Staley, and then I'll call on you, Mr. Chapman.
I just want to clarify that over the last year and a half, the study committee, as Jill has said, has brought back every discussion point to the individual boards. We've been looking at all different options, a conventional model, regional education districts, side-by-sides. This new legislation may have something different with the side-by-sides. Modified union districts, alternative models. I would ask that you take a look at the study committee articles. If you go to the WSESU website, there's a whole section on Act 46. It'll have a lot of information. One thing in particular will be the Articles of Agreement that really outlines this whole process in terms of looking at different options. I think what the resolution asks for is what we've been doing and what we will continue to do. I know when we meet with the state board, we're going to be looking for guidance about these alternative structures and other options. At that point, we would bring it back to the individual boards to confirm that they want to go forward in this manner. I don't think we've ever felt like we want to force Vernon into something they can't support, and if Dummerston feels so strongly, I think that's going to come into effect as well. I think the bottom line is what we've been looking for is what's good for kids, the opportunities that would be consistent throughout the whole supervisory union, and I think we'll be looking for guidance from the State Board of Education for the next steps. The alternative is we do nothing, or we look at a self-study and says, oh, we're doing everything perfectly, which I can't confirm that. We have data to show that we're not. And then the state board will decide in a year and a half or a year and say, well, okay, so you're going to be an emerged district. We would hope that they take the advice of the study committee with input from individual boards to say, in fact, what you've been working on makes the most sense. But we don't know that. So I would just say, to confirm or reconfirm what Jill was saying, we've been doing that process.
Further discussion with regard to Mr. Davis's motion. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Chris Chapman, District 1. I'm wondering if I could ask the chair of this town school board to go on the record with a concise statement that of her either support for the motion or her opposition to it with a very brief explanation. I think that would be very helpful for the record and actually for my understanding of this issue, which I regard as as one of the most complex issues I think I've ever had a responsibility to vote on.
Ms. Stahl-Tyler is interrogated.
I do feel like that's an interrogation. It's a really good question. I'm still struggling to understand. So my initial response is no, I'm not in support of the motion because I don't understand what it's asking us to do that we aren't already doing. And I'm trying to not hear it as some sort of a reflection on that those of us who have been working on it have not been diligent or sincere in our desires and in our work, and that, I don't know, I hear tones of that, and I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. So my initial response is that I don't think the motion is necessary. It's non-binding anyway, and it's what we're going to do anyway, but it feels wrong.
Mr. Siegel.
Hi, I'm Siegel, now of District 1. I wanted to interrogate Mr. Davis because I'm also confused. Can you give us a for instance maybe of what an alternative that hasn't been worked on might be that the school board should be considering?
Mr. Davis is interrogated should he choose to.
The number one response I get from people as I just ask their opinion about Act 46 is general confusion. So one way to view this resolution is not a study group meeting. I've come to study group meetings. They're very lightly attended. I've tried listening to sections on TV. They're very hard to follow. I'm requesting specifically, concretely, that the Brattleboro Town School Board hold public hearings, a minimum of 2, to talk about the way forward. The legislature is in flux. Nobody in this room knows what's going to be on the table in 1, 2 weeks, 1 month, to expand the conversation, to better comprehend the issues at hand. In terms of a specific, I too am struggling for specifics, and I would ask the school board to talk about how Act 46 would impact our town school budget and how it would increase equity for our town school students that don't exist now. Does that mean between Green Street and Oak Grove? Does that mean between Academy and Green Street? There's a lot of specifics that people don't understand about this law. Promises were made at the state level that it was about funding. Much of the promises about that have now been tempered highly. I'm asking for 2 public meetings by the Brattleboro Town School Board. That's concrete. It's no reflection on the work of the study group. I don't know how much more concrete that can be. An opportunity for the people of Brattleboro to better understand this in this time of flux and this time of frustration.
Further discussion or debate on Mr. Davis's motion? Mr. Agave.
One of the things that changed is that when the Act 46 Study Committee began meeting, there was no sense of where the public stood. It was operating. There could not have been because it was at the very beginning. And since that time, of course, there's been many, many newspaper articles, columns, letters, and meetings of all sorts. So a lot more has emerged. I don't know, I did not make any of those meetings. One of the concepts that I roll around in my mind, and I don't know how well this was considered, is the consolidation and loss of public control, local control. It's not completely analogous, but we all sit here recognizing the tremendous importance of town meeting because of how it pulls our community together. It ties us all together every year. Supposing there was a proposal or there was legislation from the state stating that it was inefficient to maintain 225 towns or whatever, and in 3 or 4 years we had to have a plan in which all the towns or town governments were dissolved and we would move to county or regional governments. There would be no more town meetings, there would be a regional commission, etc. That would be an enormous cultural change, social change. Now, what we're speaking about here with the schools is not as great, but it is nevertheless a significant cultural community change. And I really don't know what the import of all that is. What does it mean that we will no longer, as a town, control our school budget? Is it important? Is it not important? So I don't know. I would certainly be happy. In fact, as a new member of the board, I would love to be looking into what we are now hearing from the public about their concerns.
The chair would like to announce that the polls are now open in connection with the Australian ballot vote, so you are free at any time to cast your ballot in the back of the room. Further debate, Mr. Scholes.
Thanks, Andy, for your resolution, and thanks, Marshall, for this morning pointing out the importance of town meeting as the most democratic of our democratic processes. And that town meeting is the difference between the work that the study committee has been doing, which is by the statutory design of the committee that's doing the work, to look for mergers. Article or Section 9, the alternative to merger, the self-study, is the only option under Act 46 that allows us to keep our school boards. We have to agree that we're responsible for all of the children in the communities that we choose to work with. It doesn't have to be the SU, it seems obvious that it would be a way to maintain our SU. Vernon would be able to stay, for one thing. But we already hire people through the central office, and we share our teacher with Guilford, so it's not that difficult to share staff. Whether it's practicable or not, that depends. If we can't come up with a merger proposal, then a non-merger certainly seems practicable. But the important point, and I want to make it again, and I don't know how many times I can say it, is Article 9, the self-study, is the only way we will retain town meeting and the conversation about this Spoon just asked about in terms of the school budget. None of the other options allow that, and that's why I don't support and haven't supported the mergers all along. It's not a reflection on the efforts that the study committee has made. It's a reflection on the difficulty of the law. The intention at the very beginning of Act 46, before they even talk about the mergers and the rules, they talk about the intentions, or actually it's the non-intentions. The law is not intended to close schools. The law is not intended to force towns that have choice to give it up. Those are the two issues that the study committee has struggled with under every model that they've discussed. Guilford wants to keep their school. They don't want somebody else to be able to decide they can't. Vernon said from the very beginning, and the State Board of Ed said a year ago, December, 15 of the 16 months ago, or the 18 months of whatever of this process, that schools would not be forced to lose. They reaffirmed that, and they said that districts would not be able to merge if one of the entities had choice, that they all had to be the same. That's what the committee has been struggling with. It's because of the complexity of the law. The only part of this 64-page law that allows us to consider and go through a process, and there's a lot of work, Ron just mentioned do nothing. No one has ever been talking about doing nothing, and the alternative structure, this non-structure, this alternative to merger, there were 27 pages of rules. They cut it down to 15. They're still in draft form. We don't even know what they involve. But the State Board has said that a lot of the work that's been done looking at mergers, a lot of those pages in front of Kim can be used in an alternative merger. The difference is that the goal of this is to keep our school boards and to keep our town meetings, and it's the only option under Act 46 that we can use to do that.
Further discussion with regard to Mr. Davis's motion. The motion is, whereas the Brattleboro Town Schools have not, as of this date, entered into a school merger as directed by the Vermont Legislature under Act 46. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the town meeting representatives of Brattleboro, direct the Brattleboro Town School Board to explore the alternative structure in Section 9 of Act 46, referred to as self-evaluation, meetings, and proposals. And be it further resolved that we direct the Brattleboro Town School Board to hold at least 2 public hearings for the purpose of exploring this option for complying with Act 46. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. The chair is in doubt, and we'll have a division. You may be seated. Jane, we're going to do a division here. So all those in favor, please rise and remain standing. You have it. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise and remain standing. Thanks, Jane. Listen to the results of your vote. Ayes 46 and nays 59, and Mr. Davis's resolution is defeated. Is there further, Mr. Carville?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have another, I think, shorter motion. Whereas special circumstances in some school districts in Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union have made it extremely difficult to craft an Act 46 merger agreement acceptable to all the member school districts, and whereas under Act 46, the Vermont State Board of Education is empowered to compel school districts to merge under terms and conditions under its sole control, and whereas Vermont has a long history of local control of education, now therefore be it resolved that we, the town meeting representatives of Brattleboro, respectfully request our state senators and representatives to work with the Vermont Agency of Education and/or introduce legislation to ensure that no merger under Act 46 will take place that affects any school district in the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union without affirmative action by the voters of the school districts involved.
Do you have a copy of that, please, Mr. Carville? Thank you. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded, whereas special circumstances in some school districts in the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union have made it extremely difficult to craft an Act 46 merger agreement acceptable to all of the member school districts, and whereas under Act 46, the Vermont School Board of Education is empowered to compel school districts to merge under terms and conditions under its sole control, and whereas Vermont has a long history of local control of education, now therefore be it resolved that we, the town meeting representatives of Brattleboro, respectfully request that our state senators and representatives work with the Vermont Agency of Education and/or introduce legislation to ensure that no merger under Act 46 will take place that affects any school district in the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union without affirmative action by the voters of the school districts involved. Do you wish to be heard on your motion, Mr. Carville?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think it's fairly simple. This is local control. From what the state is allowed to do under Act 46, from what the governor was trying to do with the local school budgets, I don't think we want to absolve ourselves of control of our schools and our students. I think we want to keep that in hand ourselves, and that's the intention of my motion. It's not directed to the board or to the study committee. It's asking for help from our state legislators, and have them go to bat for us in Montpelier, please.
Is there further debate on Mr. Carville's motion? Mr. Chapman.
Hi, Chris Chapman again, District 1. I'd like to offer my support for that motion by reason of the apparent fact that this piece of legislation needs work. I don't think that if it were really fully baked, we would all be so overwhelmed with so many unknowns. And that number of unknowns is really unacceptable. Thank you.
Further discussion on Mr. Carville's motion? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Darryl McElveen, District 1. Just have a question. Should Brattleboro end up voting for, let's say, the alternative? Would it be accepted, like, regardless of the other municipalities? Or is that, would we be, whatever we vote to do, would that be the end, or would it have to be accepted by that union? And if so, then that would be, that would change what I would what I'd be voting for.
Is there a member of the school board that could respond to Mr. McElvin's question?
I would just say that any sort of alternative structure that had a financial implication for the unions, let's say, that would be an issue. That would be a problem. I think the alternative structure, the way the law currently is, would have to be approved by the Agency of Education and the State Board of Education, and that it would achieve the goals of Act 46. So this amendment is kind of changing that legislation or adding something to it.
Further comments or discussion relative to the Carville motion? Dr. Slovinsky.
Walter Slowinski, District 1. I'd like to request that any of the state representatives present at this meeting would speak to this question and how they see their role in trying to resolve some of these dilemmas that we're in.
Representative Tolino.
Tristan Tolino, District 3, and also one of the 3 state reps from Brattleboro. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on whether or not there should be an advisory thing to us or not, just to acknowledge that we are actually all working on this right now. The way that the process unfolded this year is that the work on Act 46 and trying to analyze some of the problems and questions that have emerged in different pockets around the state, the way that that worked is that the Senate has been taking testimony So there are 3 House members here today. I know Becca can't be here, I don't think. I think she's at a meeting, and Jeanette's not here because she's not a Brattleboro resident. But they've done some preliminary work. It will be coming to the House Education Committee in all likelihood in the next week or so, and that will be your 3 reps who are here. That will be our first chance to actually specifically look at what has emerged. And I think that the sentiment in the room is very clear to all of us that there are concerns. And I think, I want to be careful, but I think that this is true, that in effect what the resolution does is it says, please eliminate the ability of the Board of Ed to impose a solution if the local community can't find its way to its own solution. And I will say, not that this necessarily reflects my thinking, but I will say that I think it's very unlikely that the legislature will find a majority of people who think that that is the right solution to the current problems that are within Act 46. There is fairly broad support for the majority of the law, the way it's functioning, and in most communities around the state, people are pretty happy about it, having gotten through some pretty tumultuous early stages. I'm not saying that every place is happy about it. I think there are some really critical problems that we do need to address, and Windham County is actually experiencing some of the hardest issues anywhere in the state around how to come to consensus around what the education future looks like. But I do want you all to know that we, the 3 House members here, will be looking at this very shortly when it comes to our body, and that the Senate is currently working on trying to come up with something. And Senator Ballant is on the Senate Education Committee that has been taking the lead on this issue.
Further debate. Mr. Harvey?
George Harvey, District 3. I find Act 46 really kind of unbearably complicated and difficult to understand. And I want to underscore the word unbearably. It's just too much. It reminds me of somebody who says, I'm going to change your job. I'm not going to tell you how the pay is going to change. I'm not going to tell you how the days change. I'm not going to tell you how the hours change. But if you don't figure out a good way to change it yourself, then I'm going to tell you without telling you in advance what it's going to look like. Honestly, I find this entire thing, it astounds me to consider that this Constitution would allow such legislation to be enforced. But certainly, I think that we should try to maintain local control over our schools as much as possible. This is a tradition that we have, and I don't like the idea of it's being designed for us by somebody else who isn't going to tell us what it's going to look like until they've figured it out. So thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Further discussion with regard to Mr. Carvel's motion. Mr. Maxwell.
Jim Maxwell, District 3. Double negatives confusion. Inquiry to Tristan. You mentioned, Tristan, that there was a majority view as to what the best solution would not be or would be. And I was confused about which way that went. Was it that the sentiment is that the State Board of Education should have the power, or that the sentiment consensus so far was that it should be something that the local schools or local communities should be able to have the power to say yay or nay to?
Mr. Tolino is interrogated should he wish to be.
Yes, I'm happy to be. Thank you for the clarifying question. Let me step back and I'll try to answer the question in 2 different ways. First is to say that my read on where the 2 bodies of the legislature currently are in their thinking is that there is not going to be majority support for a change to Act 46 that fundamentally alters the way it was designed, and eliminating the ability of the Board of Ed to impose a solution on a community that has not found its way to its own solution, therefore is very likely going to continue in some form. There are people who are fighting for increased flexibility in the criteria that the Board of Ed uses to clarify legislative intent. I will say I'm pretty sure that all three of us voted against Act 46 that are currently in this room. No, I think actually the precursor bill was something different, but I think that we all voted against Act 46. And in my case, and I think I can reflect the thinking, one of the issues there was in fact that it wasn't clear whether legislative intent was going to be communicated well, and it wasn't clear what the metrics were. George, I take your point very well, and I had language in there that said that initially that said that Act 46 could not begin its implementation phase until the Board of Ed had established the criteria by which local communities would be judged. How do we know what success looks like? That was stripped out of the bill before it found a majority of voters to pass into law. So I'm very sympathetic to that question. But I think that the overall concept is unlikely to change. And the overall concept is that the state has imposed a process that every community in the state has to go through to evaluate itself and how it will fit into a K-12 supervisory district of some sort or one of the alternative models. And there are steps along the way for local engagement, local votes, as we've seen in our own community. So there are mechanisms for the local populations to influence the process, but ultimately the state is committed, rightly or wrongly, is committed to having a fail-safe mechanism in place, which is the Board of Education and their authority to impose a solution. So what I would say we should hope for is that we find that there's enough support in the building for modifications to what alternative structures look like in that process, and also improvements in the clarity of the interpretation of the Board of Ed as to its authority, because in many cases, it seems that they have interpreted the statute to allow them to basically kind of overrule local communities and to privilege one of the forms of consolidation. And there was no language in the bill that I remember that said that any one of those was superior to any others, and it's been interpreted in a different way. So I think some of those are the things that the Senate has been trying to grapple with, but there just isn't yet, as far as I know, any majority opinion that we should scrap the role of the Board of Education.
Further debate on Mr. Carvel's motion. Ms. Burke.
Molly Burke, District 2, and another one of your state representatives. I just want to echo what Tristan said. I voted against Act 46 because of concerns about local control and lack of clarity. It is very good to be at this meeting and hear the sentiment and see the impasse that we're at, and I just want to assure you that we, local representatives, will work hard to try to represent the interests of Brattleboro. I don't believe that we, as Tristan said, can change the law significantly, but we can try to advocate for the interests of our town and the specific situation we find ourselves in. Thank you.
Further debate. Mr. McElveen.
Again, I apologize. I'll start coming to more meetings. But again, so it sounds like Vernon's taking a principled stake in what they believe, and maybe if you've explained this, like if it sounds to me if we had something principled, we stand up with the state, overrule that. What's happened? What's going to happen to Vernon? And they're taking a stand. Is this if we they have this position that they're not going to fall in line with whatever is going on. If we am I to believe if Brattleboro knew what we wanted and stood on that, would the state, would that help us in preventing any the state coming in or enacting on our behalf? Like, my first question is, what's Vernon, what's going to happen to Vernon? What would see? Do we know? Yeah.
Is there a member of the administration that can help Mr. McElveen with his question?
I hope so. So we've talked with Vernon, and I've made this very clear with them, that if a four-town merger took place, which is part of our study committee articles, Vernon would essentially be on its own because of their, if they were allowed to leave the Union District. So they haven't been able to do that yet. There is legislation that would allow them to do that, and I believe if they left the district, they would be essentially a single district, which the state board would have to assign to a district, to a supervisory district, or let them stay like a side-by-side. What we have calculated with Vernon is they could contract services with the supervisory district. The cost would be about the same as it is now for their supervisory union assessment. So financially, it wouldn't really change much. However, down the road, second, third year, I believe the tax issues would cause a small district like Vernon to make a decision whether they want to keep 20% of their students with school choice, or do they want to come into a supervisory district and get the benefits of the opportunities and also the tax reductions. So for short term, it's likely if the state board said, okay, so here's the merger that makes sense, and Vernon can contract with you, that's probably the first step, I would see.
The question is on Mr. Carville's motion. Is there further debate? The motion is, whereas special circumstances in some school districts in the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union have made it extremely difficult to craft an Act 46 merger agreement acceptable to all the member school districts, and whereas under Act 46, the Vermont School Board of Education is empowered to compel school districts to merge under terms and conditions under its sole control, and whereas Vermont has a long history of local control of education, now therefore be it resolved that we, the town meeting representatives of Brattleboro, respectfully request that our state senators and representatives work with the Vermont Agency of Education and/or introduce legislation to ensure that no merger under Act 46 will take place that affects any school district in the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union without affirmative action by the voters of the school district involved. Are you ready for that issue, that question? If so, all those in favor of Mr. Carville's motion, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. You may be seated. The ayes appear to have it. You may be seated. The ayes appear to have it. There's been a division called for. Jane, if we can do a division, all those in favor of Mr. Carville's motion as just read, kindly rise and remain standing or raise your hand. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise and remain standing. You may be seated. Listen to the results of your vote. 72 yes, 34 no, and Mr. Carville's motion has been adopted. Is there further discussion under the heading of Act 46? Ms. Saltauer, yes.
So just wanted to reassure and echo what Mr. Harvey had said, that it's unbearably complex, I believe was your term. Act 46, I think all of us who've been playing around with it would agree it's pretty complex. And it's probably my fault we haven't had even more community forums, because I didn't feel like bringing meetings to all of you while we were still very much up in the air of exactly what it would look like made a lot of sense. But I would like to promise all of you, and especially you, Mr. Davis, that we will hold at least 2 more meetings for you as we move forward, and welcome you all to come out and hear more about this lovely law.
Yes.
Sandra Holloway, District 3. I just wanted to thank you all for doing those videos on BCTV. I thought that was very useful. I wish we did that more with ACTS, so I'd recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen them. It answers a lot of the questions that I think some of us have, and so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I also want to say that I work with Brattleboro Area Prevention Coalition and work closely with the supervisor union, and I have to say that the relationships between the schools in these towns are really strong, and I support it because I feel like this school district is very unique in how there's shared resources already, but there are some gaps, such as the males, and I just feel like this would allow for the more equality for all the towns. So, I just wanted to put those 2 things out. Thank you.
Further debate on Act 46? Hearing none, the chair will call for a brief recess, at which point we will return to the orders of the day. We will change the platform, and we will start with the town portion of the meeting. 15 minutes, please. We will return to the orders of the day with Article 6, to act on the auditor's report, Town and Town School District. The chair recognizes Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move to act on the auditor's report, reports Town and Town School District.
And you move to accept?
I move to accept as printed.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion to accept the auditor's report as printed? Seconded. Do you wish to be heard on that motion, Mr. DeGray?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to take a moment here to thank John O'Connor. He's our finance director, if you don't know who he is. I'd actually like him to stand up. And the reason I wanted John to stand up and be recognized is when you do audits, there's always finding of facts. That means that something needs to be fixed in your process. And since John has been our finance director, we have had every year he's throwing a perfect game. We have had no finding of facts in our audit report, and I think that John and his staff need to be recognized. And John, thank you for that, because I think that's outstanding.
Is there any further discussion with regard to Article 6? The question is, shall the auditor's report be accepted as printed, All those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have accepted the auditor's report. Article 7, to see if the town and town school district will authorize its select board and school directors to employ a certified public accountant or public accountants. Chair recognizes Mr. Scholes.
I move that the town and the town school district authorize its select board and school directors to employ a certified public accountant or public accountants.
Is there a second? It has been moved that the town and town school district authorize its select board and school directors to employ a certified public accountant or public accountants. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor signify by standing. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you've approved Article 7. Article 8.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Can I have a point of order, please?
Yes, Mr. Dimes.
I would say that the seating of the select board is contrary, on the dais there, is contrary to the charter, and that I have some quotes to read from the charter supporting the proposition that this body, this assembly, is to be a single body without a two-tier system. And I beg to speak briefly on that motion, on a motion to have them seated with the rest of us.
Mr. Dimes, I hear your motion. However, I'm going to have to rule it out of order on this article. If you wish to bring it up under other business, that's fine. But this article deals with the appointment of a town and town school district clerk, so it wouldn't be germane.
I see, but in between articles, I would make that point of order.
It's still out of order. It would be something that you would want to bring up under other business.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let's see, where were we? Did we have a second to that motion? Second, okay. It has been moved and seconded that the appointment of Hillary Francis
We haven't made the motion yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Thank you for whoever's out there keeping track of me.
I don't get that often to talk, so I'd like to.
Well, go right ahead, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the appointment of Hillary Francis as town and town school district clerk for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017 be ratified, approved, and confirmed.
Is there a second now? Okay, now let's get back on track. We want to make sure that we've got the town clerk square. It has been moved and seconded that the appointment of Hillary Francis as town and town school district clerk for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017 be ratified, approved, and confirmed. Are you ready for that vote? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have unanimously appointed our new town clerk, Hillary Francis, under Article 8. Article 9, to see if the town will ratify, approve, and confirm the Select Board's appointment of a town and town school district treasurer for a term of 1 year. Chair recognizes Ms. O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the appointment of John O'Connor as town and town school district treasurer for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017 be ratified, approved, and confirmed.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the appointment of John O'Connor as town and town school district treasurer for the term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017 be ratified, approved, and confirmed. Are you ready for that vote? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you've approved Article 9. Article 10, to see if the town will ratify, approve, and confirm the Select Board's appointment of a town attorney for a term of 1 year. Chair recognizes Mr. Gartenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
I move that the appointment of the firm of Fisher and Fisher Law Offices, P.C. as town attorney for a term of 1 year from March 27, 2017 be ratified, approved, and confirmed.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the appointment of the firm of Fisher and Fisher Law Office, P.C. as town attorney for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017 be ratified, approved, and confirmed. Are you ready for that vote? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have approved Article 10. Article 11, to elect 2 representatives to the Capital Grant Review Board for a term of 1 year from March 27, 2017. 2 members will be nominated from the floor. So before we get into the motion, the chair would open the floor to nominations for the Capital Grant Review Board, and the chair would recognize Mr. DeGray.
I would nominate Alyssa Todd for one of the positions.
Alyssa Todd has been nominated. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there further nominations? We need 2 people. Somebody is out there must, Capital Grant Review Board. I bet if somebody wants to, is George Herzog here? George was sick, but I know that George just loved doing that job.
So should we give it to him?
Is there somebody that will nominate George?
So moved.
Somebody just got thrown under the bus.
No, I talked to George. All right, so George, Mr. Chapman has nominated George Herzog. Is there a second? Okay. Any further nominations? Hearing none?
Lawrence Crisp.
Yeah. Hearing none, I would call for a motion to close nominations. Is there a second? All those in favor of closing nominations, please rise. You may be seated. Those opposed? Nominations are closed. At this point, the chair would recognize Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the following people be appointed to serve on the Capital Grants Review Board for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017. Alyssa Todd and George Herzog.
Is there a second? It has been moved that the following people be appointed to serve on the Capital Grant Review Board for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017. Elizabeth Todd and George Herzog. Excuse me, Alyssa. Sorry, Alyssa. Are you ready for that vote? Mr. Montgomery.
Tad Montgomery, I'm a little confused. Has George Herzog expressed a desire to have this position or not?
George, I spoke with George at, I know George is ill today, and I had spoken to him at the informational meeting, and he had expressed an interest in serving again in this capacity. Further questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion as just read, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have approved Article 11. Article 12, to see if the town will elect or appoint members of the Town Finance Committee for a term of 1 year from March 27, 2017. Members to be nominated from the floor. So we'll do the same drill we just did, and the chair for nominations would first call upon Mr. Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Franz Reichsman, District 2. I have 6 names to submit in nomination to the Finance Committee. And I want to actually preface my remarks by thanking the current Finance Committee for the work they've done in the past year. In addition to the 6 names I'm going to mention, if others feel motivated to volunteer, we'd of course be happy to have you as well. The 6 names are myself, Franz Reichsman, Avery Schwenk, Ralph Mima, Alex Fisher, Scott Smythe, and Abby Sweeney. I think maybe if those of us who are here might stand up just so people could see who we are.
I'm going to.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. Reichman has nominated himself, Avery Schwenk, Ralph Mima, Abby Sweeney, Alex Fisher, and Scott Smythe. Are there further nominations for the Finance Committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations. It's been motions made. Is there a second? All those in favor of closing nominations, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed? And at this point, the chair will recognize Mr. Scholes for the motion.
I move that the following people be appointed to serve on the Representative Town Meeting Finance Committee for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017. Franz Reichman, Avery Schwenk, Ralph Mima, Alex Fisher, Scott Smythe, and Abby Sweeney. And to further authorize the monitor to make additional interim appointments to the Finance Committee for a term to expire at the next annual Representative Town Meeting.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the following people be appointed to serve on the Representative Town Meeting Finance Committee for a term of 1 year from March 27th, 2017. Franz Reichman, Avery Schwenk, Ralph Mima, Abby Sweeney, Alex Fisher, and Scott Smythe. And to further authorize the moderator to make additional interim appointments to the Finance Committee for a term to expire at the next annual Representative Town Meeting. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. Those opposed, please rise. And you have approved Article 12. Article 13. To elect 3 trustees for the Brooks Memorial Library to serve 3 years. The names for consideration for terms 2017 through 2020 are Connie Bresnahan and Jenny Rowe. The third person for consideration shall be nominated at the representative town meeting. So we have the Board of Trustees of the Brooks Memorial Library has requested that this body nominate Amity DeAngelis. Do I hear a formal motion to nominate Amity DeAngelis for that position? Is there a second? Are there further nominations for the position on the Board of Trustee of the Brooks Memorial Library? Hearing none, is there a motion to close nominations? Mr. Carville made it. Is there a second? All those in favor of closing nominations, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And at this juncture, the chair will recognize Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the following people be appointed to serve on the Board of Trustees for the Brooks Memorial Library: Connie Bresnahan, Jenny Rowe, and Amity DeAngelis for 3-year terms 2017 to 2020.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the following people be appointed to serve on the Board of Trustees for the Brooks Memorial Library: Connie Bresnahan, Jenny Rowe, and Amity DeAngelis for 3-year term 2017 to 2020. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have adopted Article 13. Article 14, to see if the town will authorize the Select Board to borrow money in anticipation of taxes, grants, and other revenue. The Chair recognizes Ms. O'Connor.
Thank you. I move that the Select Board be authorized to borrow money on its notes in anticipation of taxes, grants, and other revenue.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the Select Board be authorized to borrow money on its notes in anticipation of taxes, grants, and other revenue. Is there debate? Mr. Agave.
To what extent does the town actually borrow money for this purpose?
A member of the administration, Mr. Elwell, is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We have no intention to borrow in anticipation of taxes, but this enables us to do so if there was some kind of an emergency that required it.
Further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have adopted Article 14. Article 15, to see what salaries the town will pay its officers. Chair recognizes Mr. Gartenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the salaries of the Select Board be set at $3,000 each, that the salary of the Chair be set at $5,000, and that the Select Board be authorized to fix the salaries of all other town officers for the fiscal year 2017.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the salaries of the Select Board be set at $3,000 each, and that the salary of the chairperson be set at $5,000, and that the Select Board be authorized to fix the salaries of all other town officers for the fiscal year 2017.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator. I need to amend that motion to fiscal year 18. There's a typo. We're already almost finished with fiscal year 17.
All right. Unless there is objection, the chair will allow Mr. Gartenstein to correct that typo so that the motion will read, I move that the salary of the Select Board be set at $3,000 each, that the salary of the chairperson be set at $5,000, and that the Select Board be authorized to fix the salaries of all other town officers for fiscal year 2018. Is that correct, Mr. Gartenstein?
I hope so.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Dimes.
Kurt Dimes, District 2. Aren't we going to be considering the Finance Committee's report on this subject later? And wouldn't it be wise to perhaps suspend the rules and consider it now before we vote on the Select Board salaries?
I think, Mr. Dimes, it's appropriate for them to give us a report right now. Yes, sir. And I will ask them to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Reichman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and I apologize for being slow to get my hand up in the first place. Franz Reichman, District 2, current chair of the Finance Committee, and I'm sure most of you remember that a year ago there was discussion that arose at town meeting about appropriate compensation for town boards, the school board and select board in particular, and the Finance Committee took on the task of exploring the issue and reporting back, which is what I'm going to do now. Our reports actually are in written form, and I hope you've all been able to receive a copy and maybe look at it by now. If you haven't got a copy, I know they're available in the back of the room right now. Our efforts went down two paths. One was to try to investigate what's already known on this topic of board compensation, what's been tried in other places, and what the effects are on the composition and the functioning of town boards. So that effort was undertaken. I was just looking at my name on the board. I was introduced as Molly Burke, which I'm pretty sure I'm not. Anyway, sorry. So we went down the path of research, and in all of our efforts, three of us, so I just want to mention who did the work on this, even though I'm giving the report, Avery Schwenk, Maya Hasagawa, and Ralph Mima. I'm going to also ask them to give a couple of details as we go along here. So what we found is that there's really no body of knowledge on this subject that we could find. We could certainly find out what the compensation is in other towns, and we looked at towns around Vermont and New England, found that the Brattleboro boards are generally within the range of what is paid in other towns for similar positions. We're a little bit at the high end, I think, but the $3,000 and $5,000 figures are close to what people get in towns like Springfield and Bennington and other places around the state. And, you know, we looked at places like Boston, of course, which is not really comparable, but we cast a wide net. Didn't find that there was anything that we could go on to tell us what would happen if the compensation here were higher or lower. It's just, it wasn't something where that information was available. Our second path was to do a survey of town meeting representatives and current and former members of town boards and see what everybody thought about this question. And I'm going to introduce Ralph Mima to talk about that part.
And Mr. Reichman yields to Mr. Mima.
Thank you, Chairman of the Finance Committee, Franz. Ralph Mima, District 3. I'm going to just go through a couple of points here. So the goal of the survey within the larger project that Franz just described was to gauge opinion concerning compensation levels. It was an exploratory survey only. We did not presume to sample populations, to test significance, to try to test hypotheses or carry out inference about reality. It was more sort of an opinion gathering and exploration exercise. The key thing we wondered about was, were there noticeable areas of clear consensus or clear disagreement among a group of active citizens in the town? We carried this out on a volunteer basis, no cash outlays. We used open source Google and MS Office tools. It was a quick and, I'm not going to say dirty, but quick and exploratory project. We sent surveys by email to present and former school board members and select board members, and also to the list of town meeting representatives. I believe we had email addresses for all of us in an Excel spreadsheet that we obtained. We did not do a very thorough and somewhat time-intensive follow-up to validate whether or not all of those email addresses worked. We got one response from a past member of a board, 3 from current members, and 50 from current town meeting representatives. We deliberately made sure that surveys only went to each individual once. I mean, there's certainly people who have been, who are presently on both boards, who may have been on the same boards in the past and have also been longstanding town meeting reps. And so just to avoid sort of duplication because of the nature of this survey, we made sure that nobody received more than one questionnaire, even though the questionnaires differed very, very slightly from one group to the other. We didn't want people feeling like they had to fill out 3 or 4 questionnaires. So the results. Most estimates or most opinions of fair compensation were deemed in the $2,000 to $8,000 range, just from a quantitative standpoint, although the range that people expressed was much, much greater. Compensation did not appear to influence folks' decisions to run for select or school boards, although we have to bear in mind that this is a sort of self-selected group, so we didn't survey the people who had run and lost or who had decided not to run because of the compensation situation. But it did not appear to have a big influence on the decision to run for current or past select board, school board, or town representative members. Current board members were content with current compensation levels. And some other interesting bits of data came out of this survey as well. For example, it turned out that a majority, I think 56% of town meeting reps have considered running for board positions. And again, this group reported that the compensation level was not a factor in their decision to run or not run, but there was a very high level of interest or consideration in running for board positions. Another interesting thing that I think was one of the drivers of this whole question in the first place last year was that about 85% of town meeting reps felt that income diversity, socioeconomic or income diversity on town boards should be an important goal of the town. And then we also included a sort of an open comments section, as well as the much more structured questions in the survey. And I want to just share a couple of more sort of impressions from the comments. There were a lot of comments, and they're all in the report. We've included all the raw data. You're welcome to look at it. You'll probably find it interesting. First of all, a lot of folks noted the very large amount of time, mental time and energy demanded of board members in general. There was a lot of appreciation expressed in those comments. Another general area of opinion where there was very, very strong consensus was that people should not be using town office as sources of income, that they should not be professional politicians, that this was a kind of civic duty or service to the community that should not have monetary gain attached to it. Really, with the exception of one respondent, everyone else who commented on that took that position. And then just two final things here. Some folks question whether if the goal was more and broader participation in town boards, then perhaps other incentives and better advertising and promotion would offer other effective ways of just increasing the interest and the diversity in board participation. And then the final point, which I think Franz is also going to speak to, is that some of the comments did refer to the issue of childcare costs, as one thing that might be a barrier for some folks' participation. And so, the idea was brought up of stipends or honoraria or reasonable compensation for child care costs to remove that as a barrier to participation. And I encourage you all to look at the report, which will be posted shortly in our web page. Is it there already? Okay, thanks. Franz? Thank you.
Mr. Maima yields back to Mr. Reichman.
Thank you, Ralph. Also, if I could, I'd like a comment from Maya Hasegawa on one particular area that she investigated. Maya, you want to? Is that okay?
That's absolutely fine. Mr. Reichman yields to Ms. Hasegawa. Thank you.
When we looked at all the towns that are listed in our report, and we called around and we asked for salary levels, when I talked to Burlington, the town clerk there said, well, I think there's going to be some movement to do a similar thing here. And I read in, I think it was Vermont Digger, that their town meeting had voted, authorized the council to undertake a salary study. And I believe that they allocated money to do this. which means that they will hire a professional. It won't be 3 or 4 of us amateurs trying to get information and trying to do searches on Google and stuff like that. So I think that for future reference, it might be interesting to see what they come up with in the next year. And their salaries are pretty much comparable to what we're paying right now. So it'd be interesting to see if they decide to raise them.
Further discussion, Mr. Reichman, have you completed the report, or?
I'll just close with a couple of observations. We're mostly done. So there are printed copies of our summaries. The results of all the questions in the questionnaire are on the town website. If you want to look at our raw data, you can do that under the Finance Committee reports section of the town website. Based on what we've done, our key findings are there's no consensus or a strong feeling to raise the level of compensation. We didn't find anything that would push us in that direction. You could always say that further study is appropriate, and with more resources, a more in-depth study could be undertaken. And the one thing that stood out, and our study was not designed to look at this question, but there were a number of comments about the issue of child care. I would maybe toss in elder care as an issue that we possibly, without raising the overall level of compensation, some type of reimbursement or child care program could be put in place, and it might open up board membership to a greater segment of the population. Thank you.
The question is, shall the salaries of the Select Board be set at $3,000 each, the salary of the chairperson be set at $5,000, and that the Select Board be authorized to fix the salaries of all other town officials for the fiscal year 2018? Are you ready for that question? Mr. Dimes.
Kurt Times, District 2. I examined the survey, and I regret to say that I had to inform Mr. Mima that I'm not an expert, but I've got some experience in surveys, and there was actually a serious flaw in the survey, which may debatably void most of it. Question number 4 was, what salary would you recommend for the Select Board? And the one after it was, which salary would you realistically recommend? And so from question 4 onward, the survey itself mistakenly takes a bias, insinuating that someone's higher estimation for the proper salary was unrealistic. And it's built into the attitude of the survey from that point, unfortunately. Then with respect to the rest of the study, I think it's very well done. But survey taking is actually pretty tricky. And when I have done it in the past, I ask a consultant to verify my surveys. Last year's survey of the town reps with respect to the movement of the fire station, Mr. Elwell and I concurred that it was not a valid survey, but it did sway the public. It did sway this body, and it shouldn't. The survey shouldn't sway the body on this matter with respect to the popularity of the idea of raising the salaries. So I would love to amend the proposal, as I do every year, $500 at a time. People are tired of my raising your salary a little bit every year, but I think it's time for a substantial raise, as I say every year, and we should go to $20,000 and $25,000 for the chairman. So I move to make that amendment.
Okay, let me make sure I understand your motion, Mr. Times. You had said to go in increments of $500, but then you said to go to 20,000 and then 25,000 for the chair.
Thank you.
I don't understand.
I'm sorry if I was unclear. I was referring to the past when I had amended, when I make this motion, the body usually says, well, 500. So I've historically been saying, let's make a big jump, but the body is more moderate and they allow a $500 jump.
So can you tell me, express to the chair, please, what is your motion then?
To raise the salary of the select board members to $20,000 in general and $25,000 for the chairman of the select board. In the name of income diversity for our board.
Okay, so, Mr. Dimes, you tell me if I express this correctly, but I think your motion is simply to amend the motion by increasing the select board salary to $20,000, and in the case of the chairperson, $25,000. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and they should keep their other authorities of assigning the salaries for the staff in this.
Right, of course. Is there a second? Okay, there is a second. The motion has, the amendment is, shall we increase the salary of the select board to $20,000 each, and in the case of the select chairperson, $25,000. Is there, it has been seconded, is there any debate? Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm a little indignant about this motion. I would like to speak strongly in opposition to it. I think it's foolish. And I would like to give a little history on that. When I was on the select board, we were having a difficult discussion at one time on the budget when we had to make some very steep cuts to proposed items from the department heads who'd given thoughtful and considered opinions on what their budgets should be as they, early in the budgeting process when they were proposing and justifying what they needed. And we had to say no, and we had to cut back on those. And that has to happen every year, unfortunately. We have a budget each year that does not meet all our needs. At one point, I suggested to the board that if we're cutting here and there from the highway department, from the fire department, from the police department, why don't we take a cut too as a leadership move? Now, the idea was met with a profound silence. And what changed my mind on that and made me just sit down and let the process go on over that item was something that Barb Sontag said, the former town manager. And she said, well, listen, there are people here who need to cover their expenses for, in particular, child care. I don't really know. My kids are grown and gone, and they have been for quite some time, so I don't know exactly what child care costs. We do have a new select board member who may well need or may well find it very helpful to have child care assistance so that she can do her job effectively without the distraction of worry about who's going to be looking after the kids if her husband has to be out for some reason. And I think that also that no one runs for this office in this town for the money. $25,000 actually isn't enough. I'd say $75,000 would be a fairer figure, but we don't do it for the money. We do not do it for the money. No one is compensated enough for the trouble, for the worry, for the stress, for the troublemakers who come in front of them with minor, irritating, foolish initiatives, argumentative. I think that the status quo is fine. What I would like to suggest, however, is that the select board consider an additional expense made possible for those who do need childcare, over and above this minimal, this symbolic compensation, which is very useful. But $20,000, $25,000, it's laughable, it's silly, it's foolish, and I hope this body will not take it seriously and simply vote it down. I thank you.
Further debate on this question? The moderator will recognize the current chair of the Board of Select Persons.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think that looking at the money that's paid to select board members, and I hesitate to call it salary because this isn't a paid job, requires looking at the way our municipal government functions as a whole. Select board is a form of citizen oversight. It's not our day job to be providing municipal services and guaranteeing that municipal services are being provided in a cost-effective manner proportionate with taxpayers' ability to pay, because that's our role, right? To make sure that services are being provided cost-effectively, proportionate to taxpayers' ability to pay. We have a lean, mean team of municipal employees, professionals with long-standing experience who provide our municipal services. And one of the biggest risks we face in municipal government is micromanagement. And it's one of the things that we need to stay away from as a select board. Raising salaries to a $20,000 or a $25,000 level would create a situation where select board members were looking for work to do and inserting themselves into day-to-day operations in a manner that's inconsistent with the way our government functions. We have a municipal government management professional who's got a series of department heads who report to him, and then a series of employees who report to them. And our job is to provide citizen oversight. The $3,000 and $5,000 levels are very, very appropriate to achieve that objective, and raising salaries further, I think, is inappropriate, and certainly a $20,000 or $25,000 level is inconsistent with the form of government we currently have.
Further debate. The chair will recognize the newest member of the board, or one of the newest members, Ms. Starr.
Thank you, Brandy Starr, District 1, and soon to be Select Board member. Thank you. While I do think that Mr. Dimes comes from a good place, it is so vitally important that we protect what we have in Vermont, which is civic duty. I have wanted for years to be a part of town government since I was in much smaller towns. And what drove me to run for office was not money, it was that feeling that I got when I went to the town hall for town meeting day. And things change quickly. I'd like to protect that, and I fear that raising salary would change things in a way that I'm not comfortable with. If you want to talk about childcare stipend, if you want to talk about elder care help, those are amendments that I could certainly entertain, but I think otherwise it's dangerous territory, and I want to protect the way that things are currently.
Way in the back, I can't, the woman in the back here, I can't see you. I see your hand. There you go.
Hi there, I'm Summer Birch, District 2, parent, paying for childcare today. I totally agree with the sentiments of Brandy about how this should be, that we want our elected officials to do this because they want to and not because of a salary. Totally agree. And I think that the compensation proposed at $3,000 and $5,000 is appropriate. However, I think rather than trying to bring diversity to town government by salaries, I think providing childcare for meetings at the meeting space would go a long way in bringing diversity amongst age, income, and when I look up at the board, it is true that there's not a lot of female representation up there, and maybe that is a barrier that we could look at, but I think providing it's on-site for everyone to attend meetings may be a more appropriate way to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate. Mr. Maxwell, you've had your hand up.
Jim Maxwell, District 3. All respect to Chris, I do think I want to let my friend Kurt Dimes know that, troublemakers and things that may be termed foolish are still all part of what this is about. And it certainly has gotten a pretty good discussion going about how we may expand opportunities for the town government, which I think David articulated so well. So I'm also on board with Brandy and the others who have talked about enabling people who may not in the past have had an opportunity but have may wanted to participate. So that one thing that occurred to me is the survey that was done and the good work of the folks on the Finance Committee, that there might also be some sort of a going forward, not sort of a mandate, but if possible, some sort of a look at what the past select boards have been. No comment at all on how good they are. They've all been great. But perhaps there has been a demographic there that can be analyzed and help us understand what sort of barriers there might be for folks in different income brackets or with other types of personal situations at home that would prevent them from running or participating. And could even go one step further with child care, and maybe there's a transportation issue for some folks who may live out in West Brattleboro but would like to participate and don't have an easy way in or out. So I think the question of maybe Kurt's 20 grand, 25 grand.
Not mine.
Felt no. Oh yeah, no. I thought we were taking it from you. Where's your checkbook? I don't believe that's. Okay. So it throws the ball far out in the field. But I do appreciate the fact that he throws the ball and we get a discussion out of it. Thank you.
Further debate and discussion. All the way in the very last row, yes. I think I see a new member.
Hello, HB Lozito, District 2. I didn't see reflected in the report from the Finance Committee if an option for something like a sliding scale had been considered. If there's anything in the town charter that would disallow, different amounts being allowed for select board members based on income or some other metric, some sort of sliding scale is an option.
Is that a question for the? Is that a question, Ms.?
Yeah, I guess a question to the Finance Committee, the folks that put that report together.
Franz Reichsman, District 2. I think I can say that that question never occurred to us, and we definitely did not look at it. Apparently Rutland does that. Maya, would you talk to that?
Rutland has the strangest system of compensation, and I could not get the town clerk to explain it to me, except she says that people get paid, every select board and school board member gets a different level of compensation. But she did not tell me on what that's based.
Sounds like Rutland. Oh.
But that's the only instance that I found when I did this survey.
Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I may end up using one of the statements that John always tells me that I use. At the end of the day, the reality is we can talk about all this stuff, but when we come to town meeting, we have to have a number that we are going to approve for the spending of next year. And so whatever that number may be, if you want to provide childcare, it's going to have to be part of this article question. And I don't know what that number would be, whether it's for transportation, whether it's for childcare, sliding scale. We have to approve a number. And picking a number out of the air, I don't think is the right way to do that. Maybe, we had when I said the other night at our informational meeting, 2012 is when the compensation was raised to where it is today. And actually, the motion on the floor was $6,000 for the chair and $4,000 for board members. That was amended down to 5 and 3, which you approved. When Chris Chapman said, we don't do it for the money, if we get a raise to $75,000, I might think of doing the job for the money. And I would tell the sitting board members to be careful, because you may have a run-in with my water truck when I'm down on the street. But the reality is, when we think about this, I totally agree with Mr. Gartenstein's statement. There are always going to be issues that preclude us from possibly running for an elected position or serving on a committee, and we need to try to work around those issues which preclude us from doing that. And when I think of all the years that I've been involved here, and I'm repeating myself, but I don't know anybody who has served in our community for the compensation. $1 too much, 10,000's not enough. So we come here, and this issue here, as I said the other night, I actually think this should be a 5-year reoccurring question, and that it shouldn't come up every year to talk about salary compensation, because you're not going to give the board a raise every year, but you should consider giving the board a raise every 5 years. And so as much as I enjoy Kurt Dimes, I certainly don't support this, and I suspect that not too many people in here, if any of you, are going to vote for this, and I'm not going to vote for it. And I think that the levels that we're at are adequate. If somebody wants to have the board look at other possibilities of compensation or what they could do to make running for the board more accessible. But remember, regardless of what we do, you still have to get elected by the town. And so it doesn't make any difference if we're providing child care. You still have to get elected, and I think that that's part of this equation that you have to think about. So I'm voting no. Thank you.
Mr. Barber.
Ryan Barber, District 1. I apologize for not saying who I was when I was up here before. My tag came off because it wouldn't stick to me, and so I forgot who I was there for a minute. I'm a member. I ran to become a member of this meeting because of my father, who for 50 years was the moderator in Bennington, among other positions. And what I was taught by him was that to be on the select board, and think about that word, the select board, is an honor. And it doesn't matter, the amount of money that the select board is paid never came up in our discussion of it. You were selected by the town to lead the town. And the select board is part of the government. from what Brandy said a few minutes ago, I just wanted to clarify what I have always felt and tried to say, and which the charter makes perfectly clear. The government of Brattleboro right now is not just up there. It's all right here. We are it. So I think we can, with all respect to Mr. Dimes, I think we can dispense with this motion rather quickly and get on to other business. I just want to read the last paragraph in the preamble to the charter. As was stated then, quote, "This charter is a living document replete with checks and balances under which the select board, school directors, and representative town meeting can legislate for the good of the people." Many of the people in our town are very poor. Anything that would tend, in my mind, to separate the select board from people who have little money in the way of a large remuneration would not be good for this town. I will vote against this motion.
I would like to give some others who have not had a chance to speak on this. Ms. Carter hasn't spoken.
Terry Carter, District 3. Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to comment on Mr. Chapman's statement. I'm here to listen, and I think both Kurt and Mr. Chapman have made some very relevant points, but I do have issue with Mr. Chapman marginalizing the dispossessed and pointing out people that are passionate and unbridled anger. I want to point out, I think just about everybody in this room I've witnessed acting this way, including myself. And I think judging people who are not used to talking in front of an audience, in front of a camera, their adrenaline's pumping, they don't understand the regulations and the political process, could actually use more support from people that are in these positions, David. And I would encourage you all to reach out to these people. I believe this criticizing and marginalizing people is a symptom of a much larger problem and serious problem within our country and our culture. And I have a lot of respect for Mr. Chapman and Kurt, and I think this is the beauty of the democratic process in our country. And I think a lot of us and our ancestors have served and sacrificed to make this the beautiful democracy it is. And we can all afford to reach out to the depossessed and not criticize or marginalize or scapegoat them. Thank you for letting me share this.
Hi, Robin Morgan, District 2. It seems to me that the intention of this motion is to create more economic diversity on the select board. And I'm not sure that this is a successful strategy to do that, but I do think it's a worthwhile goal. And I wonder if instead of, I don't think this motion is going to pass, but if we could just ask if the select board could have some discussion or maybe a committee around how would be a successful way to provide more access to more economically diverse and other types of diversity to be increased on the select board and school board.
The question is on Mr. Dimes's motion to increase the sum to the select board to $20,000 and increase the sum to the chairperson to $25,000. Did the chairman wish to be heard on this one more time?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I don't want to speak to the substance of the motion again. I want to say that I've served on a lot of different boards over the last 20 years. I have never encountered a troublemaker. I have never encountered somebody who came in and made a foolish statement, who I thought should not have been in front of the board to speak. We welcome all comments and all involvement from anybody who wants to participate. And I would never characterize somebody who appeared in front of the board as a troublemaker or characterize their comments as foolish in any way, and I found that objectionable.
Further debate. Ms. Carville.
George Carl, District 1. While I hope the board continues to look at ways to make itself more diverse, I think we've hashed this out pretty well this morning, and I move the question.
Mr. Carville has moved to close debate. Do you have a point of...
Point of order, sir. Mr. Carville is not allowed to move debate after speaking on the issue.
Well, I don't think that he really spoke on the issue. He just said he wants to move it. I'll accept that as a motion to cease debate. But Mr. Dimes is correct in terms of the way in which we conduct ourselves under the charter. If you're going to move to cease debate, you cannot give a speech. So he is correct on that. However, I'm going to defer to Mr. Carville because what he said was just that he wanted to bring it to an end. A motion to cease debate requires 2/3 vote, and with that, I am going to ask all those in favor of ceasing debate to please rise and remain standing to be counted. Okay, you may be seated. All those opposed to ceasing debate, please rise and remain standing. I would also urge that when we have a division that everyone please stay in their seat. You may be seated, thank you. That stay in your seat or not wander around. It's very difficult to count when people are wandering around. In favor of ceasing debate, 104. Opposed to ceasing debate, 12. And debate will cease. We then return to Mr. Dimes's motion for consideration. The motion is, shall we amend the primary motion by increasing the select board's salary to $20,000 and in the case of the chairperson to $25,000. All those in favor of the Dimes motion, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. You may be seated, and you have defeated the Dimes motion. Mr. Dimes.
I want a roll call.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dimes. We return to the main motion. Shall the salaries of the Select Board be set at $3,000 each, that the salary of the Select Person be set at $5,000, and that the Select Board be authorized to fix the salaries of all other town officials for the fiscal year 2018. Are you ready for that vote? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. And you have adopted Article 15. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 through special assessments on properties within the Downtown Improvement District as approved by town meeting March 19th, 2005, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Act to establish and regulate the Downtown Improvement District, to be used for capital and operating costs of projects of the town's duly designated downtown organization as reflected in its work plan and budget. The chair recognizes Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 through a special assessment on properties within the Downtown Improvement District, as approved by town meeting March 19th, 2005, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Act to establish and regulate the Downtown Improvement District, to be used for capital and operating cost of projects of the town duly designated downtown organization as reflected in the work plan and budget.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 through special assessments on properties within the Downtown Improvement District as approved by town meeting March 19th, 2005, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Acts to establish and regulate the Downtown Improvement District, to be used for capital and operating costs of projects of the town's duly designated downtown organization as reflected in the work plan and budget. Is there debate? Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. You'll notice the sum has dropped to $75,000. It has annually been $78,000. And at the meeting, because there was such a large surplus due to other factors, it was approved to reduce the amount to $75,000 to get approved here. I would also like to mention, when I left the board in 2013, as I joined the BABB board and now the downtown organization, I have been one of its most ardent critics of what it has not done. And I stayed on the board and actually was its treasurer up until October, the end of October. One thing I am extremely disappointed in is that there is no work plan that was in your packet for you to review, along without a budget for you to review. And at the presentation by the downtown organization, there is a significant change in their coordinating position, and the board had requested the job description for that position because it's going to include outside revenue commingled with the money that could be approved here today. Needless to say, we didn't get any of that stuff in our packet. I looked on the back table to see if there were handouts for you or us, and they were not there. And that's very disappointing to me, and I'm still on. I'm part of the design committee. I'm actually its chairman, but I don't sit on the board. So I'm the guy responsible for beautification downtown. Well, thank you for that. So whatever happens, and I'm not sure how long I'll be around, I do think what has transpired downtown the last few years has made a significant difference, and it's through this budget because the town doesn't contribute any money. They do contribute in-kind services, which I am duly appreciative of, but the reality is the funding for the flower program and the holiday lights is part of this budget. But you wouldn't know that because it's not in your hands to look at. And so I think that the organization must do a better job in terms of having someone come here and speak and having the appropriate paperwork for you to look at and then vote on. I would think that if I'm sitting out there, that it's very problematic to vote on something that you don't know what the money is going for and what the plan is for that money. So I am going to support this, but I guess I'm firing a warning shot over the bow of the organization to be more cognizant of what this meeting is about and the importance to have information to the members of this body to say, yes, we like this, no, we don't.
Chair's going to recognize Mr. Beck in the public, as a member of the public, who I think is also on the board. Is that correct, Mr. Beck?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, please.
First of all, thank you for recognizing me. I'll be the first to admit that the information in the town report is definitely not enough. I do know that we did submit a full budget to the, I believe, March 16th meeting. And with regards to the position changing and the new revenue, that contract has not yet been signed. It's difficult for us to create a new job position for funds we don't know whether or not they'll materialize. We don't know what the nature of that contract is yet. But in order to address the concerns that were expressed with regard to the commingling of funds, the DBA board has decided to create an entirely separate bank account to sequester all private funds that aren't town funds, so that whether it is a single employee with a different job description or 2 employees or 4 employees executing this new contract along with the existing contract, how that time is tracked and how those funds are dispersed will be completely and entirely separate. There will be no commingling of funds. They will be in completely separate bank accounts. And because we don't have that contract yet, the job description that is not here, which of course next year we will have all of that information, but it has not changed year to year. So the only change in the budget is the $3,000 we gave back and additional surplus that we've created through efficiencies from last year that we've redistributed to our committees. So while the budget has changed with regards to the committees, and there's a basic breakdown, as you can see, that is here, how that money is spent. With regards to the change in position, time, and job description, we don't have that information yet, but we'll present it and ensure that it's available next year. Thank you.
Further discussion with regard to Article 16? Yes.
John Megas Russell, District 1. I'm just wondering how it breaks down per downtown property owner in terms of percentage and who it is that actually pays that amount.
Someone associated with the town or with the DID could answer that?
I believe that information is part of the DID charter, and I do not have that information in front of me.
Properties within the downtown district are assessed tax at a certain rate that I don't have right in my hand, and I don't know that either of any of the administration have right in hand the tax rate. The total is up to $75,000, and we can get that tax rate for you after the meeting or Monday. Or at the lunch break,
Do you have it, Mr. DeGray?
No, but I can, there is a boundary for the DID district, and there are 88 buildings in the DID district that are assessed. It has its own grand list, those buildings in the grand list, and each of those properties are assessed based upon what the budget is. So the more value that your building has, the more your assessment. It isn't everybody pays the same amount. So one of the things with this is that it has its own grand list, the 88 buildings, and then whatever the budget is, whatever is approved, just like our tax rate, that's what the assessment is.
If would you just give the administration 1 second, and we may have an answer. Mr. Gardenstein.
DID tax rate is 13 cents on 100. 13 cents on 100.
Further debate on the question? Yes. I'll take Mr. Bosworth, yes.
Michael Bosworth, District 1. Just a short question. I assume, well, maybe I'm wrong, the government buildings that are in the district do not actually pay, or is that not true? Do they actually also pay?
They don't pay.
Yeah, the same tax exemptions that apply more broadly for the collection of the property taxes to support the entire town government also apply within the downtown improvement district, so that the municipal buildings are not taxed.
Further questions on Article 16? Ms. Turnus.
So I was looking on page 10 where you listed your goals to build our previous efforts. Down at the bottom it says invested in local radio ads. I'm a DJ on WVEW, which is a community radio station that survives only on our underwriters. And I have yet to see anything come to us. And we don't survive on a commercial radio. We're not WKVT, we're not WTSA, we don't have commercial advertisers. And I want to know exactly what kind of dollars that were supposedly given to the local community radio station. We produce Democracy Now! Monday through Friday. Every time we have a very diversified radio station, and we are all volunteers. So I'd like to know exactly what has happened as far as money going to the local radio stations.
Is there anyone that is able to answer Ms. Tarnus's question? Mr. Beck?
I don't have that number in front of me in terms of what we've spent this year in terms of radio ads. I do know that with regard to our marketing and communications, much of this work is new to the DBA, and I do know that we have board members who work in this industry, and it has only been because of their input and suggestions that the radio ads we've bought to date, that's where they've been placed. We are a public organization, and I appreciate that feedback, and we will look to utilize your radio station and any others who are interested in carrying our message. So please feel free to reach out to us. We're always available for suggestions such as those. But I can't tell you exactly where we've paid for ads. I do know that part of our mission is to attract people from out of state to our downtown, to increase vibrancy and to generate much needed tax revenue through tourism. And so while we value and recognize the importance of local radio, for many of our events we are investing in radio stations that can expand to the tri-state area, if not farther. The answer is not either or, it should be both, and I look forward to doing that next year.
The question is, shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 through special assessments on properties within the Downtown Improvement District as approved by town meeting March 19, 2005, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Act to Establish and Regulate the Downtown Improvement District, to be used for capital and operating costs of projects of the town's duly designated downtown organization as reflected in its work plan and budget. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please rise. You may be seated. All those opposed, please rise. You may be seated. And you have adopted Article 16, and it is now 12:25, and unless there is objection, the chair is going to declare a 1-hour recess to 1:25. Mr. Chapman, point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We've had a debate in kind about style at debate today. I think this is a point of order. I would like to point out there's a difference between speaking in anger and speaking in an indignant tone. I would like to point out that nothing that I said was personal to the person who made a motion that was defeated. I would also like to point out that the Columbia Law School trained lawyer, who is the chair of the select board, who made the remark that what I said was objectionable, is one who has characterized an opinion that I had at a public meeting as obscene. So I think there is a problem of sanctimony and consistency there. I would like to point this out simply as something to chew on over lunch. I thank you, sir.
We're adjourned until 1:25.